Tom Quee and Sam Wiles present Down in the Hole, a Tom Waits podcast which explores and critiques, episode by episode, every album of the American artist. To find out more information about the show and the man himself, visit TomWaitsPodcast.wordpress.com. Hello? Hello everyone, welcome back to Down in the Hole. We are a Tom Waits podcast. You probably already know that. Hopefully you've been on this journey with us for a while now. We're getting quite deep into Tom Waits' discography. We're in the 90s now. We're in the decade that me and my co-host Sam, what's up man, by the way? How you doing?
This album was released on the year I was born on, actually.
Yeah, which is, I guess we're quite young going back, because a lot of these albums, it's crazy that Closing Time came out essentially 20 years before we were born. It's a bit of a wild ride, but thank you so much for joining us. As I say, this is Down in the Hole. We've been going through these albums for a while now, and of course you can get at us in all the normal ways. You can get us at TomWaitsPodcast on the Twitter. If you want to get in contact, we post a lot of stuff on there. We keep episode updates. I recently posted, I try and troll for the more interesting things, because I've been doing the Twitter for a while now, so I'm kind of running out of old photos of Tom to share that I haven't shared already. So I'm either kind of making GIFs of music videos of Tom's. I made one of Satisfaction and Hell Broke Loose. I don't know if anyone remembers that moment in Hell Broke Loose where it cuts to Tom underneath the water dragging an enormous submarine.
Art, fantastic.
Yeah, crazy image.
It's a great music video.
Yeah, it is a great music video. And also, that reminds me, we do a blog as well, TomWaitsPodcast.wordpress.com, seamless. And Sam recently wrote an article for us about the best Tom Waits music videos, counting down the best videos, giving a little analysis there, and all the clips as well. And that's been really well received. So you can get us through the blog, get us through Twitter, get us on the email as well, TomWaitsPodcast@gmail.com. Please get in contact with anything. If you go past on previous episodes, we've had some brilliant emails about people's introduction to Waits, people who know people who have inadvertently met Waits in certain ways. It's always interesting to hear that. And we also have a YouTube channel where not only do we host the episodes that you listen to now, so you might even be listening to it on YouTube now, you can obviously download it, listen to it on YouTube, but we also upload a few bonus episodes there. We've currently got one at the moment, but we'll definitely do one very soon after, and the first bonus episode was kind of a bookmark to our first sort of 10 years of Waits that we were looking at, kind of the Asylum years, and we have both picked our personal top 5 favourite tracks from those first, I think it's 8 albums or so, and we're going to do one coming up, we're probably going to do one very soon, it might even be out by the time you listen to this, about our favourite island tracks, so our favourite tracks of Tom Waits kind of.
It's actually weird that this is an island album, isn't it? It really does feel like it belongs on the anti-label,
it does.
phase with Tom, and it just highlights how you can always see these phase shifts as they happen. Nothing's a shock with Tom. And
no, there isn't. And one final plug as well. As we mentioned on previous episodes, we now sell merchandise. We've officially sold out. And just to step right up, as it were. But just to clarify, this isn't for any monetary gain or anything like that, because obviously Redbubble's overheads are ridiculous
as far as
anyway.
You're concerned,
yeah, exactly. This is just to help with the costs of the podcast, as we mentioned ad nauseum. Anyone that does podcasts and knows Podomatic, etc., and hosting, bandwidth and storage cost money. So it's just nice to kind of support it. And it kind of blows my mind, really, Sam, that we've actually had our first official sale. We've actually sold one thing on the Redbubble store. We have sold a sticker. A podcast sticker. We don't know where that's going to, who bought it. I mean, if you are the person that's bought that, get in contact with us. We'd love to see that sticker in the wild, but we appreciate if you just want to, be a Tom Waits fan in private, that's fine as well. But thank you, whoever you are. I just want to say personally thank you for buying some merch from the podcast. It's kind of ridiculous, really. We're quite a small podcast. We're not a Joe Rogan. We're not a Dan Carlin. We're just toiling away here. We're doing all right, but we're still very new to this, and we appreciate all our fans, new and old. But just want to say again, thank you so much. So if you want to get some merchandise, help support the podcast, we sell mugs, there's t-shirts available as well, stickers. They're all kind of variations on the Down in the Hole kind of Tom Waits iconography that we do. They're designed by a good friend of ours, Danny O'Gorman, as well. But if you go onto Redbubble and you just search Down in the Hole in the little search bar, you'll find our shop, no problem. You'll see all the Tom Waits things. But
perhaps we should go like the Kanye West route and just start charging £4,000 for a single T-shirt. I'm sure we could pull that.
That's definitely worthwhile. Yeah, so
we could be 53 million in debt.
Shout out Life of Pablo, by the way. So
Is it good? Sorry,
I've listened to it briefly. I'm not a huge fan, to be honest.
I didn't know it was out yet.
Yeah. It's been out for a little while. This kind of dates the podcast, I suppose, when people listen back in the future. Like, this is just when Life of Pablo's kind of came out and stuff. And it's like, yeah, Kanye. I mean, this is a Tom Waits podcast, of course, but Kanye never really gets mentioned in anything these days. Yeah, just a quick review of that album. Musically very interesting, lyrically redundant.
Okay.
Like Kanye, you can't really compare from late registration, graduation days to now. Like, the guy just an imbecile on the mic. He's so uninteresting with what he's saying. I tell you who is interesting though. Tom Waits is really interesting, and one of the really interesting things about Tom Waits as well is that you can see these very clear styles that he inhabits, and I would argue that there's kind of free movements in Tom Waits overall, if you're going to go in broad strokes. So we have the kind of earliest, and they kind of chime in with his record label as well, which is very helpful.
Phase one
is his kind of bohemian 1970s, bebop kind of poet. Piano has been drinking, not me. The kind of drunken lout, the kind of charming wordsmith. The kind of the small change, Nighthawks, Foreign Affairs kind of Tom.
The single. Tom Waits.
Yeah, exactly. And then
Young.
Tom marries just after One from the Heart, the kind of Heart Attack and Vine One from the Heart. Marries the beautiful Kathleen Brennan, which I should say as well, for any listeners who haven't heard, just recently Ireland, I believe it's called The Late Late Show on Ireland or something like that. Someone unearthed a clip of Tom actually on this chat show in the 1980s, and for the first time ever, we not only see Kathleen Brennan. Obviously, there have been photos of Kathleen Brennan before. Go back to our Swordfish episode if you want to hear kind of. We spend quite a lot of time fleshing out who Kathleen Brennan is. Obviously, Tom's wife. She co-writes all the tracks for him pretty much from the 1980s onwards. She features heavily on this album, Bow Machine. On a lot of tracks, you can definitely feel her hand, certainly with the narrative of the lyrics, but we'll get onto that. But not only do you see Kathleen, you hear Kathleen, which is unbelievable. Like, when the camera panned to Kathleen, I watched this video about a week ago, my heart was pounding, genuinely. It was
something surreal. It was like a dream, wasn't it?
It was. We've spoken on the podcast before, never knowing what she sounds like. And there she is. Incredibly beautiful, incredibly intelligent. And it's so lovely because you can tell that her and Tom are so in love. Like, it's so clear.
She actually goes along with his shtick, which is just so adorable.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
You can see why they like each other, and it's a very sort of stereotypical opposites attract, but they fit.
Ideally. And then as we move on from the Franks phase, obviously Kathleen is inclusive in all phases now. We go into his third phase, which he helpfully coined himself as sororal, so kind of a surreal, sororal phase. And that's not to say that these phases aren't kind of, distinct from each other. They're essentially concatenations, evolutions. Like, there's very much 1970s boho Tom in Bad As Me, and you can hear a lot of Bow Machine in Orphans, and you can hear a lot of Rain Dogs in Blood Money. You know what I mean? It all comes together in a very cohesive way. But the sororal, I think Tom kind of put it best, really. There's a fantastic interview that I found with Chris Doradas, I believe that's his name, kind of a little odd surname, on KCRW. It's a radio interview. This was on October the 12th, 1992. And Tom kind of elaborated a little. This was a Bow Machine kind of press tour, and he spoke about kind of, this kind of appeals to the sororal in sense. He said, quote, "Well, I like songs with adventures in them. I think that's what everyone's looking for. Songs of adventure and, acts of depravity and eroticism and shipwrecks, murder. I don't know, that was for me. I think up until that point I'd been, I don't know, I think I was done yet. I think at that point I tried to make songs that felt a little more handmade, experiments and expeditions into a world of sound and stories. And that's definitely what Bow Machine has. Bow Machine is dealing with much more concrete feelings than the kind of emotional vagueness at times of Franks and Rain Dogs, where you don't quite know where you are. These are songs, I mean, even just looking at the track list, the earth died screaming, dirt in the ground, the ocean doesn't want me anymore, Jesus gonna be here. There's a sense of precision here, Sam, that I think maybe not necessarily was lacking from Tom's music, but is definitely at the forefront in Bow Machine.
Well, I think with albums like Rain Dogs and the One from the Heart and things like that, you really know where you are in America, where Tom's meant to be singing these from.
Yes, yeah.
This really does feel like just all America and all encompassing. Like, these could be taking place anywhere, happening to anyone in any sort of society, really. And they just have like all these very just universally dark themes. Like, obviously this is the album about death for Tom Waits, and no one can escape from the themes within this album. So with Tom's songwriting at this point, he'd kind of he does shift from very much from going, I don't feel like he's trying to please an audience anymore. We spoke in our first episode about In Closing Time, where he really did feel like he was coming across as wanting us to like him. He really wasn't doing anything for himself. And then obviously going through the Frank persona, that guy was always trying to be liked by the audience, and that kind of helped Tom make his more accessible tunes. Now he's kind of, he's an older man now. He's got kids of his own. He is more stripped down, as it were, and he really is just playing for himself here, and that's really clear. He isn't trying to make anything remotely accessible to anyone. Like the two singles for this album were probably the most commercial. It was Going Out West and I Don't Want to Grow Up. But even then, he really did still feel like he was being marketed weirdly. I know this album is always titled under most of his albums up until this point have singer-songwriter, maybe folk or jazz, and then it just goes straight to alt rock.
Yes, yeah.
There's no jump to rock then alt rock.
No,
it's it really feels like he's being marketed as something he really wasn't to the MTV generation. Obviously, as I spoke about in the blog article, both the songs that were singles off this album did have music videos, and Tom really kind of parodies that and just how it's kind of necessary now. Whereas before, with the earlier videos, it was kind of just a little novelty, really, especially things like In the Neighborhood, which was filmed in a day in his back garden. Now, I think pessimism and cynicism on this album, and a sort of a growing melancholy over everything in life, is so evident in so many of the songs.
Yeah.
And is it because Tom's just getting old, or is he getting wiser? This is also one of his earliest political albums. Obviously, people cite songs like
Road to Peace.
Yes, and what's the one off Real Gone? The Day After Tomorrow with The Soldier. But already, the moment he's hit 40, obviously he hasn't done an album proper for 5 years now?
5 years, yeah. His last would have been 87, Frank's Wild Years. So then you have Big Time, and then you have Night on Earth. But I don't think any Tom Waits fans would have been waiting, would have been sated by Helsinki Mood. We're waiting for something new from Tom, waiting for something here. And I think, incredibly, it's a recurring theme in the podcast, the reinvention that this guy can do. But incredibly, we have him doing something new again. And I think Bone Machine is inhabiting a new percussive element, that just a really aggressive, kind of gritty, kind of mechanical idea, which is obviously it's called Bone Machine. And Tom, when he was interviewed in Pulse magazine by Derek Richardson, elaborated on that, and he said, quote, "We're like bone machines. Most machines take on a certain kind of human quality, even a bicycle, particularly an old bicycle that's been ridden a lot, even when no one is on it. I like that aspect of old machinery. I saw a picture of a bottle making machine and a guy working on it back in the 20s. It made 40,000 bottles in 12 hours, and there was something very human, something very animal about it. It looked like some creature with the skin burned off. I like those sounds. I wanted to explore machinery sounds, and I think that is a common thing that runs through this album. Obviously, Tom has an instrument that a completely new instrument, a really, really interesting instrument, which we'll get into when we talk about In the Colosseum, called the conundrum. But
he's a real collector of these weird things, isn't he? Now, he's got harmoniums and orglongs, and I still think the marimba is still on this album.
Marimba pops up here and there, yeah, definitely. So it's interesting with the recording of this album as well. Tom, very much in the 80s, there's been a sense of production, especially in Frank's Wild Years. I think Rain Dog is a bit more slick, but in Frank's Wild Years especially, there's a lot of tracks on top of tracks, a lot of instruments coming in. This is a lot more streamlined. And again, he was talking on the KCRW thing, and he was elaborating. He was saying that, quote, "It was all done in a little room at the studio. It was not a room that was designed to be used as a recording studio, so I think that's what helped us. It was just a room that sounded great, a cement floor that wasn't soundproofed, a broken window, it's great. It was just a room, a storage room." And then he's asked if the room was actually on his property, and he says, no, it was on the studio. They had other rooms. We worked in the studio for a couple of days, and I was really upset, just depressed. "This room sounds awful," I said. "No music will ever grow in this room." I was furious. I was so down. So I went around, looking around the place, and I said, "What about this room over here? I bet this room sounds good." Everybody laughed. I said, "No, really, what's wrong with this room here? It feels better." It's got, and then,
that's so great.
And there's lots of great little Tom Waits isms there when he describes the room. So he's talking about how he likes the room. He's got a hot water heater, a door, a window, a chair, some maps on the wall. It's got some crates in there. He's talking about running. He talks about runs the wires down the hill from the studio into the room. He talks about it being rainy season. Everyone said, "Oh sure," and they did. And we got in there, and everyone started to come together, so it was good. The project had a flat tire on the first day, and out of that we invented a new place for it to happen. And Bone Machine has that caustic nature to it, doesn't it? It has that slightly slatey thing. Like, it's still melodic. I wouldn't say it's atonal. I'd say most of the songs you can sing along to. Even Earth Died Screaming is quite catchy, even though it's, quite callous. But there's still Tom in the songs, as it were, but I'm just fascinated by the production of this as well. And he was talking about how a lot of the music was recorded outside, basically, as well. And like the room itself wasn't soundproof, so there's a lot of things coming in. He said, quote, "We had airplanes to deal with and cars. Sometimes you'd have to stop and wait for a train to pass. But I like dealing with that. It puts you in the correct perspective on what you're doing. And I don't know if any of our listeners are aware of the quite obscure 70s English band Heron. They're a brilliant folk band. I think they did like 2 albums, but they kind of did the same thing. They recorded exclusively outside, and you can often hear birds and planes and stuff like that coming into the music, and the odd cockerel calling, and that's just so Tom, isn't it? And it just works so well with this surreal aspect.
Yeah, it's very chocolate Jesus-y, isn't it, with the with the chicken crowing. The other sort of big conventional shift in this album is his use of percussion. He says that, like, while there isn't much actual drumming on the album, the amount of actual hitting of things is so pervasive. It is literally on every song, and it is on something you really wouldn't expect. Like, a lot of it just sounds like him hitting tables and chests of drawers and things like that. He said he had great sound engineers, Chad Blake and Bill Dawes and Joe Marquez, and he said they can get great sound out of anything. They don't flinch. If you say you want to put a mic up a bull's ass over there and you want to slap him on the stomach, they'd say, well, I guess we could use a 57. They would look at you twice. They'd say, get the rope and get the bull down here. I just don't like that traditional drum set particularly. You have to be an idiot to think about it. Why don't you just hit that with that? I think there are a lot of great percussionists who explore things every day. I'm just kind of finding my own falling down the stairs way about it. That's all. When I come to the studio, the car is loaded with junk. And that's actually from, I'm sure anyone who's looked into this album in any detail knows about the fantastic Bone Machine press release.
Oh, amazing,
kit.
yeah.
Like, do albums even do this anymore, where the artist explains each of the songs as they go?
No, I don't think so. I mean, there is... Actually, it's funny you mentioned that. There is a digital version now. Occasionally on Spotify you find it, where they release the album, and then after each track there's like a little commentary track. But it's not common. I mean, I've seen it on a few albums that I found, but yeah, I think press as a whole, the music press, is a bit more redundant now that if you are a musician that seeks out approval, you can just use your Twitter or whatever to explain that. But yeah, and it's a little sad really, but yeah, the electronic press kit's kind of a bygone era, sadly, but it is, like you say, the Bone Machine one is fascinating.
Do you like the percussion on this album? Does it challenge you? Do you think it's a bit too atypical?
No, I love it.
He's still the master of rhythm, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, thinking of songs, especially like Such a Scream, there's so much going on there rhythmically. It's such an exciting listen. But yeah, no, I think Tom it's one of those albums where you really can judge this album by its cover. Like, it's a fantastic cover, by the way, isn't it? Tom with the goggles on.
Well, like he is leaving these sort of trilby Tom.
Yeah.
Just for this one album, he is the goggle and devil horns Tom.
Yes.
And that is a great little Pepper-esque persona that is going to allow him to go full punk. Like, I love the way that, well, obviously we have the song title All Stripped Down, which is obviously just so indicative of how a lot of these tracks will just be 3 or 4 of these instruments in that crappy little room outside the studio. And he says it's kind of like his idiot approach to the music, and it just allows him to do things that have never been done before, things that you find out in a field somewhere or that you find in a gutter, and bring those home. And it does just bring all of these sort of raw, fantastic little elements that I think he does achieve better on Bad As Me. I think that does have more of a closed room feel. Whereas this, somehow, despite being in this really small room, like, which you don't only find out about if you saw the information, it does sound very open still. I always found that it was a very large, very grand album.
Yes, yeah, I agree. It reminded me slightly, going back, because when you read that, it is interesting to learn about all the rooms, but it doesn't necessarily have that room feel. I think a lot of the Orphan songs do feel like that. They feel like they were recorded on a real old-timey equipment in ramshackle conditions. Like
in his garage.
Yeah, it reminded me slightly of... Wasted Light, which is a terrible Foo Fighters album, horribly overrated.
You really don't like that one,
I hate that album. And one of the reasons that I hate that album is because all the press leading up to that album was, oh, we've got Butch Vig who did Nevermind, and we're going to record it in Dave Grohl's garage. It's going to be a back to basics kind of. And you listen to the album, it just sounds like a big dumb stadium rock album. Like it doesn't sound it doesn't sound like it was recorded in the garage. And I think like with Tom, it doesn't really sound like it was recorded in a little room, but I think crucially the music feels like it was, if you know what I mean. I know that's a kind of a mild distinction to make, but in terms of its lyrical theme, in terms of its attack, in terms of a lot of the way the choruses are constructed, it lacks that ornate Jerry Yester-ness to it, you know.
The album is very aware of this of the studio process and doesn't hide it really, and it does give it that sort of raw sense of Jim Jarmusch spontaneity, you know what I mean? He really does just feel like they've walked in one day and they're going to hit it on that first take, and there are no real stinkers, I'm going to say, on this album coming up. It all fits thematically, and like that always sounds like a real cop out when you're talking about an album saying, oh well, you know, it fits the album, you've got to listen to it in the context of the album. But really, honestly, when you listen to it as a whole, it all does seem like it is one cohesive unit taking you on a journey. But there are quite a few of them that you won't come back to on their own. Very much like it's like a much better Frank's Wild Years. I know we kind of ragged on that album a month ago. Like we do not underestimate. We do love Bone Machine, and on this podcast, you know, we always talk about how the three main albums you get pick people into Tom Waits with is Rain Dogs, Small Change, and Mule Variations. I think a lot of people, especially people with more rocky leanings and guitar fans, could be in their top three most accessible Tom Waits albums.
Yes. If you were to encounter Tom Waits as the guy who sounds like Cookie Monster, you know, the kind of far off crazed madman, then this is.
Why is God's Away on Business the most viewed Tom Waits YouTube video? It's ridiculous.
I think it's because it's one of the best song titles ever. I think just the idea God's Away on Business is such a brilliant line. Like,
there's always about 3 kids in the main comment section on every Tom Waits YouTube video saying, "Oh, he'd be a great death metal singer."
Yeah. And this is the album for it. This is the album for it. And I think the opener, Earth Died Screaming, is definitely one of the best opening Tom Waits tracks. Like, it really fills you into the album, you know. And I remember encountering this when I was first going into Tom Waits. As we mentioned before, I downloaded that torrent, and I was going through all these things. And
stop admitting it on air.
and oh my god, this song just came out of nowhere. You know, it starts with that clompy Harry Parch, like the kind of sinewy. You can feel the guitar kind of flitting in and out, but it's like
very post Parch,
that kind of weird thing. And then Tom's lyrics, it starts with quite disorientating lyrics, I have to say. Like, I think the opening couplet, I still don't kind of know what he's going for. Rudy's on the midway and Jacob's in the hole, and then he's talking about the monkeys on the ladder. So you kind of like, okay, where are, you know what I mean? What's going on here? Obviously, the title kind of helps you orientate that. And the devil shovels coal, so we know we're in kind of this apocalyptic world. And then just these brilliant images talking about the crows as big as airplanes, the lion having
it rained mackerel, it rained
mackerel. Yeah. It's just
the lion has 3 heads, and really scary.
It is really scary, and Tom's kind of subdued when he comes into this, and then it brings into that unbelievable beatdown of a chorus, that heightened voice, that thunder strut, you know, like, you know, I just love the delivery of this song. I just think it's so powerful.
I think this is the real antithesis to his regular album openers, which we've discussed. Like, the best ones are things like Underground and Singapore, which are these alluring invitations to existing worlds that he's going to explore to us. But Waits here like subverts all of that and like starts with the greatest conceptual ending you could ever possibly do, and that's the first song on the album. Like, where do you go from destroying the earth? He's flipped it back around, and once again he's done what we thought he couldn't do again, which is to put us back on edge. It's like, Tom, you've done it again. Where the fuck are you taking us?
Yeah, and it's not normally he'll set you on edge by being like weird or off kilter, but here he's just being genuinely horrific. Like, you know, the earth died screaming. So it's not just people died screaming. What a powerful image. It's not only the whole planet is dying, but it's dying in agony. It's not like there's just kind of like, you know, everyone just dies and whatever, you know, the meteor strike, but it's like, you know, people are dying slowly, people are screaming as they're dying, and
there's no like Earth dying in its sleep option.
No, but I'm really interested, and the more I think about it, the more I'm kind of like intrigued by it, the paradox of the chorus. So the Earth's dying screaming, right? So does that mean that the speaker's also dying if he's on the Earth, and he's dreaming of someone? Who is he dreaming dreaming of? And is that person dying? How are you dreaming if the world's dying? Is he asleep as the world's dying, or is all like, you know what I mean? It kind of adds into like on the surface level, it's just, you know, quite simple, you know. Everyone's it's rapture essentially. It's the end of the world. But the more you probe it, as with the greatness of Waits, you know, we were talking about Kathleen earlier and how she has that brilliant narrative discipline. Of course, she was a story editor for Francis Ford Coppola when they first met, so incredibly skilled writer. And I just love that idea. And I love the title as well, Earth Died Screaming. Obviously, the chorus is The Earth Died Screaming, but there's something about that little clip nature that just adds to the precision of the delivery.
I love that line. Hell doesn't want you and heaven is full.
Yeah.
He'll actually use that phrase in the next song.
I think the next use of that is better, but I agree. I really like that as well. Yeah.
But like I think it's just so effortlessly economic again in just letting the listener know how fucked the situation is for you from here on. It's actually from the original narration from the original Dawn of the Dead film, I think, where like, it explains where the zombies come from. It's like because heaven doesn't want you and heaven is full. And then there's the poster for this really cheap sci-fi B movie that I think Tom admitted he saw called The Earth Dies Screaming, which has a real like 50s like claw robot on the front. I'm sure it's terrible, probably like Plan 9 from Outer Space. This is actually possibly not. I'd like to say it is one of my favourite Tom Waits album openers, but I don't ever come back to it on its own merits.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
When I have to listen to Bow Machine as Bow Machine, I'm like, oh yes, I get to listen to this again now. But it isn't one that I seek out.
No, I think for me it's more the variety of his voice that captivates me. You have the kind of the classic Tom kind of speaking like this, and
he's very Army Ants.
Yeah, and I love how it goes from the real to dreaming of you. Like it has that really nice falsetto at the end as well, and it's kind of a nice appeal to whoever this guy's dreaming about on this dying earth. You know what I mean? And again in the chorus as well, a second voice can be heard, like this demonic thrust just behind. I mean, Waits is. Look at Innocent When You Dream on Frank Rogers. This guy's an expert at self-harmonizing himself, and it just works in that absolute, you know, bastard of a chorus. Like the swagger of this chorus I just find irresistible. It just pumps out the speakers.
Weirdly, as Tom's getting more private in his life, he's got a family now, and he really does want to protect that. He's sung about the traps of Hollywood so endlessly on his albums, so he knows how to keep them back. But there's still a lot of him doing the press rounds, weirdly enough, for this album, and from here on out, like it's going to get a lot sparser. Like he goes into full Michael Jackson recluse mode here. But he did say that for this song, we got sticks and tried them everywhere. I wanted to try and get some sound out of that pygmy field recordings that I love so much, and we couldn't get it. We tried different places in the room, different microphones, nothing, different kinds of sticks, sizes of sticks, and then we went outside and just put our microphone on the asphalt, and there it was, boom, because we were outside. So like this does seem like, you know, someone has run outside, and they hear that bony skeleton dance percussion in the background, which is it's so menacing. And it is like you've ran outside and you can see the apocalypse happening before you. Tom Waits talks about the biblical imagery on that KCRW FM radio interview again. Done in 1992. Luckily, he actually plugged this album well into 93. He did, as well,
yeah.
He says, it's my wife's fault for the imagery. She's a lapsed Catholic. It's her fault. Yeah, there's some biblical stuff on there. Earth Died Screaming. That was from the Book of Rudy, actually. He was one of the lost disciples. He was in, and then he was out. He finally opened up a cafe. It's a lovely little story.
It is.
Wasn't Les Claypool on this album as well? Yeah, here we are. He talks about it in Thrasher magazine, which is like a US skating magazine, which I never thought Tom Waits would go for. Yeah. I don't know how. Like he does mention that he used to skateboard when he was younger, though.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, like he would skateboard past Mr. Stitcher's house from.
Yes, he does mention that.
What's he building in there?
Yes, he does. Yeah.
He said Laypool came up and played on The Earth Died Screaming. He was in between fishing trips at the time. He's great. He's got such an elastic approach to the instrument. A fretless, spastic, elastic, rubberized plasticine approach. He's like a funhouse mirror. He can take and elongate his face. He's a real pawn shop weasel, endlessly in pawn shops. I think that's why he tours.
Yeah, it's check out the article on our blog, by the way, that we did a few months ago about Tom Waits' best sidemen, the people that have been on his records, and I wrote about Les Claypool because Les Claypool has just been brilliant on whatever Tom record. He's most famously perhaps on Big in Japan. He does a brilliant bass performance on that. But I love the fact that this song as well, the way it ends, it doesn't end as the chorus would make you think. It doesn't end with a clump. It doesn't end like with the earth just dying. It ends with kind of, almost reminds me of Frank's theme in terms of tone, that kind of archaic end of the pier instrumentation that feels kind of arcane and devoid of any familiar cultural touchstones, almost as if the person is waking, and what they're waking to is the reality that if the earth were to die screaming, there would, in Tom's eyes at least, there would be nothing else, and that leads us into that.
There is a piece afterwards.
It leads us into this incredible atheist anthem, I suppose, "Dirt in the Ground." Sam.
Tom always weirdly puts us back in the carnival if he's talking about the country. He does that a lot on Frank's Wild Years. So we've gone from this sort of jarringly soft, painless way to end like the cacophonic destruction of the universe, and we go on to just. He doesn't let up here. No. It's so harrowing. It's so unwelcoming. Like, what a completely unfriendly opening duo. He doesn't let up on the subject matter here. It's this somber requiem procession that we have to witness after the death of the earth, and we are reminded that, despite the fact we've kind of vicariously witnessed the destruction of the earth with Tom, we are all destined to meet its same fate at some point. Despite this being a guitar-heavy album, as we're going to find out, it is nice to have Tom on some piano early on. Like he lets us know that he hasn't left behind his old ways, and each one of these progressive phases, even though there are majorly distinctive differences, there will be elements from the second and the first that he will drag up with him. So it's always Tom Waits. It's a very simplistic song. It's very nihilistic. It's very pessimistic. Tom himself mentions that he's getting a little older now. He's not as happy as he once was. In Thrasher magazine again, he says, perhaps it was just too much wine. Half of me, I feel like a jackhammer. I love to holler and stomp my feet and throw rocks, but there's another side of me, like an old man in the corner that's had too much wine. I'm probably too sentimental for my own good sometimes, and we are getting this just like you said, atheistic. That's a very good way to describe it, because on this album we're going to have things like Jesus Gonna Be Here, which is just such an obviously catchy gospel song, but he starts us off with, sorry folks, like no matter what you're going to hear later on this album, the fact is we are just dirt in the ground, and everything you're about to hear is probably going to be a lie.
Yeah, and just
it's not the truth.
The beginning of this song, I mean, to go from the hellish evocations of the first track into this kind of those opening chords that just feels so downtrodden and beaten. It just feels like there is absolutely no hope in this world, and the lyrics to this track are absolutely fantastic for it. I think this is one of Tom's most consistently well-written songs in terms of his just setting up the argument that we are all dirt in the ground and using all the stanzas to expound that. So we have the first two stanzas, which are just kind of building on that idea. So, one of Tom's most nihilistic openings, what does it matter, a dream of love or a dream of lies? We're all going to be in the same place when we die. He's talking about, your spirit don't leave knowing your face or your name. So there is a belief in spirit, interestingly, but it's not really attached to a being. And then the second verse just kind of like builds on that, but I really like how Tom sings like this, and then when he gets to that really beautiful image of I want to know if I'm the bird, if I'm the sky or the bird, he kind of resumes into like powerful Tom Waits delivery. It kind of rises above the rhythm, and then it just gets pulled down back again into that beautiful lyric as I was saying before. Hell is boiling over and heaven is full. We're chained to the world and we're all gotta pull. Absolutely incredible, and then he goes from this into the third one to get in this little story, and dirt in the ground becomes something that not that he's saying but that someone else is saying. So he talks about the the sort of the hangman idea. So I'll just read the whole stanza, it's brilliant. Talks about, now the killer was smiling with nerves made of stone, he climbed the stairs and the gallows groaned, and the people's heart were pounding, they were throbbing, they were red, as he swung out over the crowd I heard the hangman said, we're all gonna be just dirt in the ground. So what a horrific image as well, the hangman just saying that, just in front of all this crowd as well. And then the final stanza, which is so bold because religion runs throughout this album. I think religion is a big thing in Tom's sororal era. altogether, really. I mean, you don't really hear much talk of religion. I mean, obviously I'm thinking like Down in the Hole and stuff like that in maybe the early years, but it's often done tongue-in-cheek, whereas here he's just kind of, I wouldn't say attacking religion, but he's coming at it on its own terms. He's not kind of reappropriating it in any way. And then the final thing, even though this song is, like, say, the atheistic anthem, he invokes religion directly, talking about Cain and Abel, and kings and beggars, and talking strictly about the biblical, but using that to reinforce his own argument of there being nothing else. It's very bold, really. And again, just like Tom's voice here, I mean, what do you feel about this voice? Because is this the first time we've heard him sing this way, this kind of fragile kind of, it's quite clear, isn't it? It's quite easy to follow. But
it's the most depressing falsetto that he's ever done, isn't it? I do like the way it's pitched against the like Ralph Carney jazz elements.
Yes.
But like he sounds really tired.
He does.
And like the band behind him feel weary as well. They almost want to give up as much as he does. There's a great quote in the Telerama interview. He says, you get here, even though on a compass it says north and south and east and west, you know that we're only heading in one direction from here to the grave, and that can only be measured in time. We're all going to the same place. It's really dark. Like he really doesn't like let up at all. He says, someday we're all going to be in a little box. It's going to be real dark, and then they put the lid on. You're going to be down 6 feet, and that's where we'll spend what there is the rest of time.
Damn.
He's not going for any charm anymore. Like, I know he's not saying this on like David Letterman or anything.
No.
But it's like this. Sorry, kids. This isn't the album for you.
But in spite of this,
he's so heavy.
But in spite of this, the chorus has a swagger. Well, we're all gonna. It feels like almost like a rock star, kind of elaborating on the final chorus.
And the piano pulls back, and it's just the basic like that. It's so good.
Yeah.
I love how there's Tom can never resist putting in a bell that tolls for the dead as well. It's so weird that like it's a religious song with all the trappings and imagery of typically religious songs, but it's just paired with this reductionist atheistic element, and shows that Tom is nowhere near running out of different contrasts. He will always sing beautiful things with pain, or sing painful things beautifully. And he's found another one.
Beautiful melodies telling me terrible things, I believe, is the quote that seems to be plastered over every single Tom Waits Twitter post that isn't mine. Like that seems to be all that people want to share on there. But yeah, I think Dirt in the Ground and Earth Died Screaming, I mean, an incredible 1-2 punch that really reorientate you. If you were hoping for the wilderness of Franks, or maybe, you were hoping, okay, Tom hasn't done like a sort of straight piano-y jazz album for a while. Hopefully he's going to go back at no. But
you're not in Kansas anymore.
We're not in Kansas anymore. But I think that the third song is a little bit of light, really. Even though it's called Such a Scream, it's not kind of a scream in the sense of a dying scream. It's more like a joy. She's such a scream. And this is obviously all about Kathleen, and Tom kind of just a pay on to Kathleen, really building her up. And it's interesting. We have reference to Clank, Boom and Steam, which obviously we'll return to later as well. And
Eyeball Kid as well.
Yeah, exactly. So Tom is full of all these kind of metatextual references here. But I absolutely love this track. I think finally we have a bit of an upbeatness to it. Dung, 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 dung. It just has a pop to it, it has a satisfaction groove.
There is, it's so similar to like Step Right Up when you first hear that a great Tom Waits bass line, and like when you sit back and you watch a new Steven Spielberg film for the first time, and you're just taken back to that place. Tom just takes you back to that place where like, oh, okay, this is going to be fantastic. And I always have a soft spot for a Tom Waits song that starts off with him going 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
He always counts it in brilliantly. It's also quite a brief song, isn't it? It's just like 2 minutes 6.
It's 2 minutes 9, and what I think is really interesting about this song is that it's 2 minutes 9, but regardless of it being so short, there's still a 40-second jam in the middle of it, basically, where the instruments just kind of take over from basically the first minute to the minute 40. Absolutely fantastic kind of nice interplay between the horns and the drums and everything, and the little guitar as well. Like the guitar has a lovely mode. Joe Gore, who returns from Night on Earth. It's interesting because there is a lot of guitar on this album, as you say, but the guitar is never kind of too much. I mean, I think maybe the next song, All Stripped Down, it's probably where it's most prominent.
Simplistic.
But yeah, it's not got the Rimbaud kind of elasticity where it's kind of all over the track. But yeah, I really love this track. I think Tom's lyrics in this are fantastic. Not only is his his idolization of Kathleen, she's made of
unbridled passion.
Yeah. She's a cheetah coat fills up with steam. I think one of the best ways that he describes is saying that she is his inspiration. He talks about her shoveling coal inside his dreams. So the idea that she is the catalyst for wonder and imagination of Tom, it's just a terrifically original way of saying that.
Well, like the opening verse to this Tom Waits song is probably my ideal Tom Waits opening verse. It's just a tidal wave of beautiful imagery. Paleface said to the eyeball kid, she just goes clank and boom and steam, a halo wings, horn and a tail, shoveling coal inside my dreams. There are no laws, she's made of cream, she's such a scream. And those obvious direct allusions to that, as you said, that future Waits metatextuality aside, it's so inventively and creatively off kilter. And what ways to describe your woman? She has the obvious pairing again of halo wings of an angel, horns and a tail of a devil, reinforcing the album's religious themes. But it's just so beautiful. Like, she's also cream, she's also pure, and just the idea that song can be such a scream. It's both endearing, but there could be this potential for a more literal danger. You've got to be on your toes around Kathleen.
Yeah, it's
and then there's that great little wail at the end as well. I think it was recorded quite fast, this song. When he was talking to the Bone Machine press release interviewer, Rip Rents, I believe his name was, he said it just came real fast. The plough is red, the well is full inside the dollhouse of her skull. There's more of that bone. It's a love song. It's Kathleen. It's like when you see people write their names on rocks while you're driving across the country. It's the same thing. And another interviewer told him that it sounded very beef-hearty. And Tom Waits just said, yeah, it does. I love him. The drummer on that track was Brain. He works with a group in San Francisco, the Limbo Maniacs. And the drumming on this song is ridiculous.
Yes, yeah. There's a lot of like kind of breakbeat stuff, and the bass as well. I love the doo-doo. There's just a lot of starting, riff, moving out, moving in. The song feels like it's just chugging along. There's so many different rhythms going off underneath all this mad imagery. It's such a lively track compared to the dour couplet of the first two.
Like the sort of scattershot clatter of the sort of unpredictability of the drumming is, well, we've discussed how like Tom Waits can like sometimes indulge in anti-music. This is anti-beat keeping. This is anti-drumming, and yet it. Despite this, it has this such aggressive flurry of strikes that dart in and out, and it's so lively and spontaneous that you're just like harshly and pulled along by it. It's so it's an unstoppable love song, and I didn't know you could be so aggressive and apocalyptic within a love song as well.
Yes, yeah, it is such a love song, but none of the cliches at all. And Tom, look at like Ruby's Arms and stuff like that, or I Can't Wait to Get Off Work. Tom can write normal love songs, but this is just a real off the wall one. This is a sororal love song.
Do you remember that line where he goes, "Qui bon tres bien"? Like the way he said that, I had no idea for years actually. Up until about 2 days ago, when I was doing my research, that it's actually just saying "how good, very good" in French. Yeah, so I'm not sure where that leaves me with the interpretation. It's the song itself is such a scream.
Yes, it's a terrific little palate cleanser. And then as we end, the guitar, I like when this happens in albums. Everyone seems to do this time to time, where kind of the guitar line or a melody line will end a song and then will just be taken up straight away in the next song. So we hear this kind of descending do do do, and then that comes out.
It winds down.
And then it arrives into all stripped down, which is interesting because the song doesn't really start for 40 seconds, similar to how there's a 40-second break in Such a Scream. There's kind of this Mardi Gras Cherokee kind of tambourine chant. You hear a guitar lick kind of creeping out of the song and building itself out. It's like there's a slightly cocked wah pedal. It gives this kind of weirdly low treble kind of thing. And I adore this track purely because of the relationship between Tom and the guitar. One of my all-time favourite Tom Waits songs is Down, Down, Down off Swordfish Trombones with Fred Tackett. And one of the main reasons I love that song is...
I believe that was your song of the album.
Yeah. And one of the reasons I love that song so much is because like it's singer and guitarist just in each other's pockets. Like they're really relying on each other. It's not just a backing rhythm player. It's not just Mark Knopfler playing some solo licks over the top. It's like they really know where each other are going with their own melodies, and they rise above each other and interrupt. They merge and overlay. They're very conscious of each other. And that's this song. This song is all groove, and obviously, I actually counted all stripped down. Is said 31 songs in this 2 minutes 20 refrain. So it just gives you this constant kind of all stripped, with the guitar as well and the melody, and sometimes the guitar will pull out and do like little solos, little blues licks, little notes. There's just I can't get enough of the relationship. It's irresistible, the spilling of it.
Yeah, it's got that very catchy, squelchy, quote unquote alt rock guitar.
Yes,
this is a very kooky and very fun, call and answer type song, which Waits even himself described as a half gospel, half love song. And you as your listener, depending on your own moral inclinations, perceive the electrically charged lyricism as either this like raunchy propositioning of a lover, or stripping oneself down from their own baggage to get into heaven. As Tom said, you can't go to heaven with your skeleton and your flesh. You have to be all stripped down. The vocal elements of the track, obviously reflect this bisection by pitting the seedier, more menacing Tom versus the shrill, semi-gospel banshee. As we've said before, Tom has these perfect harmonic contrasts, like in songs such as "Temptation" off his last album, Proper, where he does kind of duel with himself. And later, when the falsetto Tom and the very sort of army antsy, dirty Tom start singing together, it does hit that sort of diamonds on my windshield, perfect bit of synergy. And it does hit the sweet spot for me with that real pinpoint precision. It is also, as we said, the most obviously stripped down of all the songs. It is just the basic instrumentation. You can't imagine him doing anything more than one live take, actually.
Yeah, and his vocal delivery as well, he kind of has this kind of voice. And I love how, again, he'll just erupt and he's like, and we will shine! Like, a delivery of Shine, you know what I mean? When he kind of really lets himself go there. Like, Tom is so creative with his vocals, so able to manipulate it into any sound he wants, and Bone Machine is one of the best for that, really. It seems a lot of experimentation with that. This riff, I mean, not to be kind of anachronistic, but kind of reminds me of, I don't know if anyone knows Dan Auerbach, who is the main guitar, well, the only guitar player in Black Keys. Absolutely brilliant guitar player, very inventive. And it kind of has that kind of, one man and his guitar kind of thing here. And like you say, in terms of themes as well, we're speaking out themes in the intro, but all the 4 songs so far, and I think pretty much all the songs, have kind of evoked that sense of being down, of being without, of being the absence of something, Even Such a Scream is playing on, like, She's Steam. It has this kind of ethereal sense. There's nothing concrete here. And again, we're pulling it down. But for me, it's just that all stripped. It's just that repeat of that refrain. I just love that. We hadn't really had that in Tom yet. And obviously, he loves this kind of older music and this sense of the chanting, the shaman, as it were, and that's all overall stripped down.
It is very shamanistic. It does remind me of that video Joe Rogan constantly posts of ayahuasca shamans chanting and singing in the rainforest. This song, for me, it is such a good pairing with the last one. Obviously, they do blend with this distorted horror show percussion and maracas that sounds like a weird ghost trapped in the nether airwaves of this album. It still just ends up being, we spoke about the top 4 best opening Tom Waits tracks, and we kind of resign that to Blue Valentine, as that is just a stellar album opener.
Ridiculous, yeah.
But here a challenger arrives. The double barrel of Earth Died Screaming with Dirt in the Ground, and then a second double barrel of Such a Scream, and all stripped down. It's totally blistering. They're all real hits.
Yeah, they are all of the same quality, aren't they? There's I could not argue for one being better than the other, really. They all give me the same amount of enjoyment.
Yeah, just a little quote from Tom, and this article's got a terrible title, and I think it's meant to be like a funny riff on a movie Tom was in. The article's called "Tom Waits at Work in the Fields of the Song." Yeah, referencing the terrible
that film sucks.
Amazonian film where Tom fights an American Indian in a plane about to crash into a cliff. Apparently,
yeah, Thomas Wolfe. I think we reviewed that in the Small Change episode. I'll have to check that, but we have reviewed that movie. So Hector Babenko, wasn't it, the director?
Yes.
Sorry, continue.
Who also did Ironweed?
Ironweed's good.
Yeah, Tom says we actually recorded it at home. I have this tape recorder at home that I love so much. I recorded all these rough tapes on it and loved the grit that I got. So I was really trying to find the same feeling in the studio. That was the challenge, and I think that's what that room was really.
But I mean, as we're talking about the consistent quality of the opening four, I think it doesn't necessarily drop with "Who Are You," the fifth track, but it's not one of the most memorable. I think "Who Are You" is an important song for Tom. I think in "Who Are You" we see a lot of shades of the balladeer that will come out in Tom's music. I think Mule Variations, for example, I'm thinking of like, you know, "Take It With Me," Georgia Lee, Pony, songs like that are just, you know, exceptional songs, like unbelievably good, and a lot of ballers as well, and like Coney Island Baby and stuff like that. So kind of a new type of ballad for Tom, the sororal ballad, the slower ballad, the ballad where the images are more important, because there is a melody here with "Who Are You," and I like the story of "Who Are You." It's kind of almost ironic, really. Tom is asking "Who are you" to someone who keeps changing, but he keeps changing. You know, maybe this is almost appeal to himself, but you feel it's not, because he's talking about the character that he addresses to has a tilt-a-whirl, you know, is at a carnival, the Red House, you know. This is a good track. It does have maybe a first misstep lyrically. There's one line that just really always hit a little bit discordant with me. "I did my time in the jail of your arms."
Oh no, I kind of
That's
like
very
that
sixth
one,
form
actually.
poetry, no?
I don't know. I thought it was a nice doing your time. It gets across story wise that, you know, that's what he means. There was an interviewer, and I couldn't find the source, but I know I'd read it, and he was asking Tom that, like, he felt that this was more of a song that was written by Kathleen.
Oh, okay.
So if you want to talk about, you know, the economy of storytelling in that sense, perhaps that could be the case. This isn't a song that I really think of when I think of Bone Machine. I don't really go, oh yeah, the album that has "Who Are You" on.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't really have a particular love for it. And a lot of people, when they sort of rag on this album, they sort of say how
People rag on this album.
People don't like every
Oh my
song,
God.
and they talk about how the ballads are still kind of too similar to the old Tom Waits ballads, and he kind of, you know, he's obviously going to perfect that with songs like Pony.
Yeah.
In Mule Variations, where it does feel like it's very part of the now, and all these piano old time Tom Waits ballads still feel a bit more back further in his career. You know, even though here we obviously have the two diametric contrasts with the dueling banjos / dual guitars. Obviously they weave very peacefully together with the sort of twangy, despondent coarse lead with the you know, acoustic little pick me up. But I do like the song, the way he sings it, but the song itself could have a little more energy to it.
Yeah, it's a little bland. I like the breaths he takes. I like when he comes to the chorus, like, "Tell me, what did you do?" You know, that's kind of like,
well, like the whole brass is breathing, it's heaving, isn't it? It's sort of like slugging its way through. The imagery in the lyrics, you know, I did my time in the jail of your arms aside. Obviously, we have the Red House. We're going to have the Red Barn later. So maybe that's, you know, referencing possible bloodshed, maybe less literal bloodshed.
It could,
heartbreak, perhaps.
It could perhaps be a reference to Hendrix's Red House as well, the great Hendrix song Red House, about someone returning from war. I believe it's someone returning from Vietnam and finding everything's changed. So I mean, it could be an evocation there. It's interesting actually, because this song does have quite a few references, like Red House, and more obliquely Ophelia. Obviously Polonius' daughter.
Our first Shakespearean reference,
I think that's our first Shakespearean reference. If you know that Tom's done more, please TomWaitsPodcast@gmail.com, because I think that will make a good blog post if there was enough to do it. I can't really think of any more off the top of my head.
Well, like, this is actually a really, really good image for a song like this, because obviously, you know, she's the lover of Hamlet, who goes mad because she doesn't recognise who or what her lover has become. Yeah. Obviously, spoiler alert for anyone who
400-year-old spoilers. Yeah.
Spoiler alert for Hamlet, but obviously he pretends to go insane, and she doesn't recognise that, and it just shows how, you know, people can change, and obviously, you know, we've said Tom changes himself, so it all becomes a kind of a less romantic, less specific version of Broken Bicycles, where it's just Tom.
How dare you mention that album?
Dude, one from the Heart was good. I've listened to the instrumental montage on the Spotify playlist, giving that a little plug.
Yeah.
Just search the Tom Waits podcast playlist on Spotify, where we've put all of our top songs. We'll obviously get to our top song for this album at the end. For me, with Who Are You, it just takes far too long for him to get to the chorus, and it isn't sung enough. Like he willingly avoids the chorus. Like, don't sharpen your nails. Say, who are you?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's a little flabby, and the chorus isn't very strong. But I think with Tom Waits songs, there's always gold here. And if you sift through, and if the melody isn't good, and if the instrumentation, this is not good. It's not great. I think there's some good lines in here. He talks about, "Well, go ahead and take this the wrong way," which I really like. So, don't take this wrong. No, take this the wrong way. Like what I mean? This is not meant nicely. And he's talking about, "I fell in love with your sailor's mouth and your wounded eyes. Are you still jumping out of windows in expensive clothes?" he asks as well. So this character's quite an unusual character. If you put together all these kind of like Jitterbug Boy in a certain sense, from Small Change, like all these different aspects of this person add up to quite an interesting antagonist. But like you say, there is a chorus here, but it kind of creeps out the music. It's not announced. I'm not saying everything has to be like Earth Died Screaming, where, the big thuds let you know where the chorus is coming, but it just feels a little... I mean, I wouldn't say this album is overlong. It has 16 tracks, but quite a few of these tracks are quite short, spoken word tracks, instrumental tracks, etc., etc. And it goes past quite quickly. Most of these songs aren't that long. It's not like... Rain Dogs, where there's like 19 tracks, and a lot of them are quite long. But maybe Who Are You could have been put on Orphans.
See, like, that's the best thing about Orphans, isn't it? You never have to say, "Oh, just throw that Tom Waits song to the wind," and well, we should never have heard it. It can always pop up again there later. And this isn't, a particularly bad song.
No, it's not. It's not. Yeah.
We never, it is hard to find a non-Bette Midler related bad Tom Waits song.
Saving All My Love for You.
Yeah. But on an album of such tightly packed, like, expensive, thick meat, and then this is just some kind of like a little offcut. Really, it's not that specifically needed. Barney Hoskins, when he was interviewing Tom, kind of asked, like, "You tend to sort of bury directly autobiographical stuff. What about Who Are You? Should we know who that's about?" And I think that's kind of the wrong question to ask, really, because as we've said, this album does feel very general and about the world and about everyone, and it could apply to everyone. It's not "Who are you, Jane?"
No.
And Tom says, "Gee, I don't know. I think it's better if you don't. The stories are mostly songs that are less interesting than the songs themselves. So you say, 'Hey, this is about Jackie Kennedy,' and it's, 'Oh wow.' Then you say, 'No, I was just kidding. It's about Nancy Reagan.' It's a different song now. In fact, all of my songs are all about Nancy Reagan." And that was with Mojo in '99, actually.
Oh, right.
He also confesses in the Bone Machine press kit that, like, it is a cynical song. It's openly the kind of stuff that he'd say to an old girlfriend at a party. "Who are you this time? Are you still jumping out of windows in expensive clothes? A thing you'd like to say to anybody who may have raked you over the coals," which is a great little phrase. There was a guy called Robert Hilburn was doing an article in the Los Angeles Times called "The Impact of Dylan's Music." And he's kind of convinced that Waits might be paying a tribute to Bob Dylan's "The Sad-Eyed Lady of the Lowlands" on his album Blonde Blonde in 1966. It's got that kind of Desolation Row grandness to it.
Interesting.
Just like, leaving home, working on the railroads, marrying gypsies. The song is kind of dream, a riddle, and a prayer. And he's pretty convinced that Tom and I believe they are kind of aware of each other. I don't think we've posted any pictures to the Twitter of them together.
No, Tom did guest on Bob Dylan's radio show. Bob Dylan's, I think it's called Storytime Hour. I apologise. I'm not really a Bob Dylan fan, I have to say. I'm not really a fan genuinely of what I've heard, and I'm not really listening much to him. I know people love him as well. I think
the Bob Dylan movie's good with Kate Blanchett.
Yeah, big up Kate Blanchett. But I find Dylan musically, I find him redundant. I just find his songs very samey. But we'll move on. Who Are You? The more we talk about it, the more I'm kind of warming to it a little bit. It's not too bad. The whole album's quality. I mean, everything on here is really good, including The Ocean Doesn't Want Me, Sam. This is an interesting one.
Onto the only sort of spoken word piece on the album, and wow, it feels like it's been a while since we've had one of these. Like the last one proper being on Rain Dogs.
Yes,
Again, spoiler alert: Tom hasn't lost any of the knack for purely auditory storytelling. No. He does describe songs as being like little movies for the ear, and being on an album almost exclusively about death this song doesn't disappoint, giving us some of these, a darkly sardonic song that is much like, it's like one of those silent nightmares where you remain like totally helpless. It does have that kind of Potter's Field-esque cinematic flourish to it, and it's just indicative of Tom's cinematic talent for songwriting, really. I really feel like, I didn't mention this on the article that went up a couple of days ago, but this song definitely could have a really haunting music video. The percussion, again, a mixture of traditional and non, has a literal like aquatic depth to it. Like you can hear the echo resonate around like empty chambers. Yeah. And Tom's like speaking through some sort of like tannoy system that is also placed underwater. We've got this sinister cowbell throughout, and like the notion that the singer, like the only reason he hasn't been able to commit suicide is that because it's the ocean that doesn't want it. So, out of some morbid madness, he will keep coming back over and over until the ocean does want him. Like seemingly content with the inevitability of the destruction of all things. We've obviously, had the grandiose destruction of everything, and now this is just one man.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I was reading the lyrics. Obviously, it's quite a short song, but there was always a word in this song that I'd never heard before. Strangels, which I'd never come across before, and I was
and Brangels as well.
And I was doing a little bit of research, and Tom actually discussed this. He said someone asked him about sort of the song itself, and he said, I quote, how everyone. He's talking about how. Strangels was actually a word that his daughter contributed, and he said, how everyone gets in like Jimmy Durant. Everyone wants to get in the action. Now, I don't know who Jimmy Durant is, so I did a bit of research, and any listeners that do, I apologise, but me and Sam are English boys as we were, and I know he's more an American guy. So Jimmy Durant, this is from Wikipedia, was an American singer, pianist, comedian, and actor. His distinctive clipped, gravelly speech, New York accent, comic language, jazz-influenced songs, and prominent nose made him one of America's most familiar and popular personalities from the 1920s through to the 1970s. So there you go, check out Jimmy Durant. And then he says, my little girl said she has a word called, the word is strangels. It's a cross between strange and angels, strange angels, strangels. Or I said you could have brangels. Those strange angels that live in your head would be brangels. We just went around and around with it, and it wound up in The Ocean Doesn't Want Me Today, that little suicide note on the album. Then he says, hey, kids write thousands of songs before they learn how to talk. They write better songs than anybody, so you hope you write something a kid would like. And now, I don't think if a child heard The Ocean Doesn't Want Me Today, they'd necessarily really enjoy it. But,
it's terrifying.
But I'd love, and there's that really dark line. I'd love to go drowning. It's as you say, it's this guy wishing to be engulfed by nature. I mean, we start off by the Earth's dying, screaming. Now this guy wants to die in the Earth, as it were, and
it opens with this weird, like warped, distorted, like bubble effect, like the ocean doesn't want me.
Yeah, it feels like very nautical.
Did you like relegate this song when you first kind of got into Tom Waits? I found it to be very off-putting early on, but as I've come back to it, and I've listened to it as in the album as a whole, and as a song on its own, and I've always liked it. I think it's one of his best spoken word pieces to date, and a lot of the songs on this album could be like beta or alpha versions of songs on Mule variations, and this, in terms of the atmosphere and fear produced, is a sort of prelude to what's he building in there, which is just going to take it to the next level.
Yeah, and towards the end of the song as well, there's a few odd details that I really like. One is perhaps a suggestion that this character is an alcoholic, saying all they will find is my beer and my shirt. And then I just find the image of the lifeguard weird. Like, the riptide is raging and the lifeguard is away, but the ocean doesn't want me to stay. The ocean doesn't want me to stay. So the idea that it's going to return. But I always see Tom in like this kind of like wading into this like, off some old peninsula somewhere. So not somewhere a lifeguard would be on a beach, rather just some odd patch of ocean in the middle of, some I don't know, some forgotten island or something. But yeah, it's a fantastic track. It's very, very short as well. And it's a great sort of palate cleanser before we get into the Jesus Gonna Be Here. What a riot this song is. Like,
a riot is a very good word, actually. This would be almost, if this was on vinyl. It's one of the albums I actually can't find on vinyl. Funnily enough, when this album was released, it did actually start out on vinyl, but sort of CD was coming. It was the next big thing in 1992. So it had a very, very limited vinyl run. So I'm actually really, really struggling to find it. Anyone who would like to locate me one, that'd be great. but this, we'd be coming towards the end of the opening now. There are 8 songs on each. We've got a Little Rain next, but Tom always likes to end on a closer. But before that, we just have this demonic gospel song. Almost, it's one of the most instantaneously enjoyable songs on the album. And you catch onto that fuzzy bass, Tom's warbling, wailing tones, and you're just onto another winner. It's a classic Tom Waits song in every sense of the word, and it is a big hit with almost every Tom Waits fan you ever meet. Even though you will rarely ever meet a Tom Waits fan, they all love Jesus Gonna Be Here. Like All Stripped Down, it's a very stripped back and simple composition, and it reflects the low down and dirty street preacher origins of this song. Obviously, Tom in the press releases says like he would just see people on the street, very much like Rain Dogs, where he would collect the sounds of the city. Now Tom's collecting the mad voices of the city, and just paired with a very simple guitar, bass, and it's just a simple foot stomp percussion.
Yeah,
and it does conjure that mad street corner preacher vibe, just him stamping and screaming around. It just assaults you, and it forces you to listen to it, all while giving you this crawling groove of the bass and this hillbilly twang of the guitar. It's irresistible.
Yeah.
Like, in contrast to the last song, a song about a man who cannot wait to die and be taken up, just for dying's sake. He just wants to commit suicide. Is paired immediately with a song about a man who cannot wait to die to be taken up to the Lord.
Yeah.
And how seemingly positive that is. And I love the dichotomy between the two. His vocals are also off the chain.
His vocals are insane. I think this is the first we hear of Tom's lisp. He kind of sings with a slight lisp here. He kind of sounds like Samuel L. Jackson's Kingsman villain. There's certain you can definitely hear him on the word unfurled from this mortal coil, because Jesus going to be here soon. You can hear a slight kind of drag on his mouth, which I think is great. I love the fact you hear him at the start of the song. There's just hear him in the eaves of the song, creeping up to the mic.
Oh,
it's crazy. The beat to this is absolutely insane. I can't get enough of the rhythm. And again, I mean, it's called Jesus Gonna Be Here, but I read this as another atheist song, really, along with Dirt in the Ground, because this guy's keeps saying Jesus gonna be here soon. But obviously he's never gonna be here, and he keeps saying it, and he keeps saying it. But there's, and he's playing on the idea. So he says like, Jesus is going to be here soon. He's watching the horizon for a brand new Ford, and like you can take that as the Ford on the horizon, like the break of the horizon, or take that as the car, the car Ford. And he says, "Hollywood be thy name." So this isn't necessarily the most outwardly religious song. Tom's kind of subtly mocking that, reappropriating those gospel rhythms and delivering one of his best tracks. Again, recurring theme of this podcast, the VH1 Storyteller's version's probably a little better than this, I would say. I think Tom's vocal delivery is a bit more confident on that than this. It has a bit more of a blood behind it, and just having an audience there chanting along. When he begins this song, he doesn't begin it like... This song begins with a bit of an intro, as in the VH1 thing. It just starts with him going, "Jesus gonna be here," but it's such a riot. And there's an interesting interview actually where Tom was speaking on the radio thing, as we mentioned before, and the guy asks him if he's religious, and Tom says he's not. And then the guy asks him if he was brought up religious, and Tom says, quote, he said, "Oh, I had church when I was a kid. My mom heard the title of the album and she didn't like it. Bone Machine," she says. "Why must me always degrade?" She says, "Remember, the devil hates nothing more than a singing Christian. So I went to church when I was a kid, and one Sunday morning I finally decided I wasn't going to go anymore, so I stopped. I don't know what's out there or up there, a little office, maybe a little office, like when your car gets towed in New York and you have to go down to Pier 74 and it's like 4 a.m, there's a plexiglass shelf, it's like 3 inches thick with bullet holes in it, and an old woman with bifocals sitting there at a typewriter, and you realise that your car is, you can see it, chain gang to hundreds of other cars over there, and your car looks ashamed and embarrassed, and you realise that she's got your destiny in her hands." So it's probably something like that. I mean, please, it's going to be an organisational nightmare after you die. All these spirits, who, where, what, when, what did you do? Do you have your number? It's going to be hell, which I think is a really good point. I love that. He says, so you're going to have to be really, you're going to have to be able to find someone after you die. It's going to be really hard. There's going to be people that can't identify their loved ones because they're just little lights blinking. It's going to be rough, which is beautiful response to that question by Tom. I really like that idea. But yeah, I can't get enough of this song, and this is probably one of Tom's all-time most accessible songs, right? I mean, who wouldn't enjoy this track? It's such a fun listen.
Yeah, it is just, it's so simplistic. It isn't trying to achieve anything great, but it's funny how you said like it's kind of another atheistic track, because obviously Tom will always kind of, like, you know, an arms dealer, he will pit both sides against each other. Like, you really don't have to be, you know, religious to like the song on any level, but very much like Way Down in the Hole, again from Frank's Wild Years, Tom once again, you know, despite being a much more obviously mad and untrustworthy version of this ranting preacher character that he seems to tap into so easily, he still has that worrying power to kind of captivate my imagination in this song. I kind of do believe that Jesus is going to be here soon, and, you know, and just because he tells me to, it almost makes me feel like he's trying to like push it and see how far he can take this character, and see how far they will indeed follow him. He said to the Bone Machine press release in 1992 again, he said, probably would have been better if we'd just gotten a Baptist choir, but I kind of like it myself, just bass and guitar. I actually think he played the upright bass with Larry Taylor on guitar. He said, I was trying to sing, making my voice real big. It's a gospel song, so I guess I was thinking about different things to sing about, because one tends to cover the same ground, you know. There are the things that draw you in, I will always be drawn to, and they'll keep happening to you, and you'll keep writing about them. It's as if this time I'll solve it, you know. And I think the best songs are riddles that you try to discover what you think about them while you're writing them, and then the deeper the riddle, the longer you'll sing in the song. And then there's some songs, like Bob Dylan said, and I believe this is the quote you were talking about earlier, Tom, are best written in a very peaceful place, sung in turmoil. And then there are other songs that are the other way, that are written in turmoil and sung in a peaceful place. They really do have a lot of power, and really do help to keep you, and really do help you sometimes. And there is that, like, there is you know, the real power in this song, but there is that sort of tragic irony.
Yes.
Like you say, that we know, and it's hard to like fall in love with it really, because, you know, with that sort of tragic backdrop to it, and you almost feel dirty and seedy for like really getting into it really. We then move on from sort of a classic Tom Waits song that everyone knows to you know, a smaller track. It's another Tom piano song. It's A Little Rain. I actually call this song Georgia Lee 0.5.
It's very Georgia Lee-esque, isn't it? Yeah.
It shares some almost identical themes and plot points. A lot of people have written about Bone Machine as well. Like, there's this is one of the bigger albums. Like a lot of people, for a lot of people in the 90s, this was their first experience with Tom Waits. Like, he did kind of transcend the media again, and, you know, there was a big media push. A lot of people got into Tom Waits, but people have said that this is maybe like an ill-fitting ballad, and sort of detrimentally brings down the tone of the album. And I couldn't disagree more, really.
Yeah. I like this track. I think it's like a minor entry if we're talking about the great Tom Waits ballads of the anti-years. You know, A Little Rain, Never Hurt No One. Everyone remembers that, and that's kind of fun in a certain sense. It's a little bit disparate, this world. Like, I think all of the lyrics and the images are strong, though. We start off with classic kind of Frank's images. You know, we're thinking about the cover of Swordfish Trombones, the Iceman's Mule, Man with Missing Fingers plays a strange guitar, which is kind of interesting actually, because it begs the question: is the strange guitar just a strange guitar, or is it strange because he doesn't have fingers and it's adapted to him? I will never know that, you know.
Okay. Well, it's a Django Reinhardt reference.
I believe it is, yeah. And who had the fingertips cut off, didn't he? Similar to Tony Iommi from Big Up Birmingham. And then talk about German Dwarf Dances with the Butcher's Son, which is straight out of Singapore. You know, and it builds on that as well. They're dancing on the roof and the ceiling's coming down. I take it that's in the same bar as the first stanza. I'm not really sure. And then the third stanza is a really lovely stanza, really, that feels more mule variationsy than Bone Machine, as does the second verse as well. We were talking about Georgia Lee before. The world is round and so I'll go round. You must risk something that matters. There's this sense that, like, you know, life is hard. Like, maybe the Earth's not going to die screaming in reality, but life is really hard, and everyone has troubles that they must get through, and a little rain, you know, some sort of interruption to your ongoing existence is always going to happen. You have to deal with that. And then we have the final sort of stanza, which is beautiful, which is Georgia Lee, as we say, and I wish I was in Georgia Lee, as we say. I wish I was in New Orleans as a Georgia Lee melody as well. I don't know, Georgia Lee is just a central great track, but yeah, I'll just read the whole thing because it is kind of, I mean, it's, you know, there was a quote I was reading recently on Reddit, and it was like, what's the saddest story you can tell in like 5 words or something like that? And there's some Hemingway thing. I'm going to butcher it now, but it's something like for sale, child shoes never worn, or something like that, you know.
Oh,
And it reminds me that I know this is a little bit longer, but it's the same thing. So she was 15 years old and she'd never seen the ocean. She climbed into a van with a
she'd
vagabond.
never seen the ocean.
Never seen the
Come
ocean.
on.
And the last thing she said was, "I love you, Mom."
That line always kind of had a particular resonance with me, actually. Like, I'm not sure if you have this particular neurotic paranoia, but like, I always try and make sure the last thing I say to someone, if I'm not going to see them for a while, or if I'm going to do something that's remotely more dangerous than walking to the shops, be like, oh, I love you, lest some horrific turn of events, mean my last interaction with that person be something, banal about the weather. And the fact that she does get to say "I love you, Mom" at the end does give it that sort of true finality to it. Like, again, this is an album about death. Tom Waits, in that awful article, At Work in the Fields of the Song,
Yeah.
talks about, he says, around here, these small town newspapers, they cover a lot of murders. So obviously, he's talking about his cerebral nature, and a lot of car accidents. I don't know if there are more car accidents and more murders, or if they just get more upset over them. There's something about the way they write about them. It's like a warning. For some, murder is the only door through which to enter life. That's a rough one to think about. Maybe in the cities it seems more commonplace because it's against a backdrop that is also violent. Here, where you see golden fields or whatever, it's a greater relief, a stark contrast. And this song is a stark contrast to everything else that we see on the album.
And that stanza, the 15 years old one, that to me screams Kathleen. I really
Yeah.
think she wrote that. And
Back to that economic storytelling
exactly.
again.
I mean, not that
Yeah.
Tom wouldn't have helped, but I just feel that that's her. I can feel her hand on that. And there's a good quote actually where Tom's talking about working with Kathleen, and he says, in terms of Bone Machine, you always throw out a lot of songs, not throw them out, but cannibalize them. That's part of the process. Frankenstein that number over there, take the head off of him and put it, sew it onto this guy immediately, keep him alive until the head has been severed, and it's part of song building. Kathleen's great to work with. She's loaded with mythology and a great sense of melody. I spin the chamber and she fires it. It's Russian roulette. Sometimes you get... I love that. Sometimes you get great things. The collaboration is great with her. And we did have a lot of songs that were discarded, but that's part of the process. Obviously, a lot of those songs go on to orphans as well, but... I like this track.
Well, no, wasn't Filipina Box Spring Hog written around this time?
I believe
as well?
it was, yeah. I believe it was. Obviously, that pops up on Mule.
the next album.
But yeah, it's nice. It's nice, this track. And I think just to kind of focus on the 15 years old, which I think is kind of the centre of the song, really, and the most memorable aspect of it, because the chorus, whilst quite light and memorable, isn't that powerful to me, really, and doesn't really level this song. I think the 15-year-old is what I love, and I think there's an irony there. Like, he spent the first 2 stanzas talking about the minor things in life, someone that doesn't have fingers, or you're a small dwarf, but at least you're dancing with someone, and you're sleeping, but at least you got a shovel and glove. But in this one, your daughter being taken away by a vagabond and never being seen again, that's not a little rain. That's a deluge. That's not something you can get over. That's going to hurt you,
Well, whilst it's not as distinctly foreboding or threatening as the other songs on this album, it still just allows us to, after these juggernaut tracks that we've been subjected to, we can calm down and revel, for better or worse, in the more serious and depressingly real effects of stories that Tom Waits sings about. It's funny you should mention Kathleen. When he was interviewed in My Wild Years and the Woman That Saved My Life for Word magazine in 2006, when he talks about Kathleen, and he says, well, she's from the Midwest, like in the song A Little Rain, which is on Bone Machine, and then he sort of sings, well, the Iceman Mule is parked outside the bar where a man with missing fingers plays a strange guitar, and the German dwarf dances with the butcher's son, and A Little Rain never hurt no one. So she says, why do you have to take his fingers off? Why can't you just let the guy play the guitar like a normal guy in a bar? God, and why does the German guy have to be a dwarf? And if he is, why do we have to know? It's not a film. And then he says, but honey, sometimes you have to shorten people, lop off a limb. It's just artistic license.
Yeah.
It's so, even though Tom is doing a very serious song about a very serious matter, this song is, a tragic Georgia Lee 0.5. He still adds those little flares that at least keep it interesting. It could be a little too heavy. The rainfall could fall a little too thick, and it just wouldn't be worth listening to.
But as we move out of that gentle, very nice ballad, and we go into the side 2, which I guess we still should talk about sides, maybe in the future when we're on CDs.
If this, you know what, I'm going to do some research after this and I'll find out. But I'm sure if it's 16 songs of similar length, this would be the album opener for side 2.
Yeah, and this should be.
And it would be fucking incredible. Whoa!
Yes, this is. I mean, what we've been promised with Earth Died Screaming is kind of resolved in the Colosseum, which is one of Tom's heaviest songs. As mentioned before, Tom on this track plays an all-new instrument called the conundrum. He's talking about it here. He says, quote, Serge Etienne built that, a friend of mine. It's just a metal configuration, like a metal cross. It looks a bit like a Chinese torture device. It's a simple thing, but it gives you access to these alternate sound sources. Hit 'em with a hammer. It sounds like a jail door closing behind you. I like it. You end up with bloody knuckles when you play it. You just hit it with a hammer until you just can't hit it anymore. It's a great feeling to hit something like that. Really just slam it as hard as you can with a hammer. It's good and therapeutic and all that. And yeah, in the Colosseum, what a great title as well for a Tom Waits song as well. But just that,
yes.
Dung 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 dung. It's like the aggression and energy in this track. And this is one of the longest tracks as well of Tom's, and it's one of his most oblique references to politics. Obviously,
yes, he's getting very
political now. And I mean,
this
this is 92. Now we're in 2016. Nothing's really changed at the moment. We're seeing the horrific rise of Donald Trump, which is very, very scary. So politics is just as demented and depraved, if even more so. But it just surprised.
If more of a game now as well.
Well, yeah, and it's just Tom is just not really pulling any punches here. The presidential whore, the bald-headed senators are splashing in the blood. The dogs are having someone who is screaming in the mud. So basically, Tom is comparing the White House and the Senate and all the kind of American political tropes to the old school Colosseum. The battlegrounds where just blood was shed constantly, and maybe.
Well, he picks the Colosseum. It looks like this is a sort of semi-ironically Christian album, and the Colosseum is where the Christians were sent. So if you're a believer now, this is where you've been sent, and the crowd is sent into an epileptic fit. Like they're all like everyone here's mad. The song is crazy. It's so aggressive and it's unpleasant, and like it's very much like the Inconvenient Truth as done by Tom Waits. Like he says like he didn't want to be like too downer on it, like for the Bomacine press kit he says it's a little cynical. Yeah, I like the lines in it. You can sing them with conviction and know what it's about. I'm just tired of playing clubs. I just want to work the bigger rooms. So if I make a song called In the Colosseum, maybe it'll get me in the bigger rooms. No, I just imagine this kind of modern Caligula that is the modern government. If anyone's seen Caligula, that's a film where Malcolm McDowell is basically playing the mad Roman emperor. Lots of sex, lots of baby head smashing, which is a very famous scene, and a nude Helen Mirren, which is always worth price of admission. But he just says we're all just kind of marooned in this place where information and ideas have become very abstract, and yet the hyena is still tearing at the flesh. He continued for Ear magazine by Bert van der Kamp. It's in the Netherlands. He said, "Yes, I've lost my trust in politics. To go into politics, you have to have certain kind of social skills and little vision or leadership. For all those who want to unite with the big egg of commerce and government, the bald-headed senators are splashing in the blood. It's despicable, it's greedy, barbarous, and cruel. It's the first thing that we do." And we've talked about how this is a cynical album, and Tom just doesn't like you say pull any punches. There are no redeeming qualities about this system at all, and it's our fault as well. We're the ones who are cheering at the Colosseum, and it's not the politicians who are fighting in there for us. They are pitting us against each other. I do prefer it when Tom's maybe a bit more less obviously political, like in What's He Building in there? Like that's an obvious reaction to the Unabomber scare and the American paranoia at the time, without being without
talking about senators and presidents and stuff. Yeah, and I love the sense of inevitability, the sense that nothing will change. For the dead there is no story, no memory, no blame. Their families shout blue murder, but tomorrow it's the same. And then the great chorus, the In the Colosseum. It's got a real swagger to it, and great bit of wordplay as well from Tom, going from In the Colosseum to Call 'em as you see 'em, which I really
Yes.
like as well. Very subtle, very good, and because that's what he's doing. He's literally calling these people as he sees them, and this is a crazy song, a very unusual song in the Tom Waits catalog, isn't it? There's not much like this that he's done since, really, where he's really kind of just like projecting so aggressively and violently over such a scattershot, skeletal beat.
Well, like, he does get a little, like, as I say, subtler with his politicized songs, so maybe he realised that this isn't the best way to go about it. It wasn't until very recently that... have you heard, like, if you put the earphones in and listen real close into the background, you hear this super distorted, like, guitar grunge work that, like, underscores the entire thing, this real, like, stomping, like... Like, this song is so massive, like, it does feel like the Colosseum.
Yes.
Everything's so big and brash. You know, obviously you've got the ironmonger clanks of the conundrum. There's some sly slither of rather cheeky marimba work that almost like highlights that sickly glee of those in power, like, have when they, you know, pit us against each other. I'm sounding like a real Wolfie type character here. But yeah, in the Colosseum, it's powerful.
Yeah, and you were talking about listening with the headphones as well. One of the things I noticed at the start, I think it's like Morse code or something. There's kind of like a sort of configuration coming in. That doesn't really fit with the theme of the Colosseum, but there is something, there's other sounds there. But yeah, and again, as we mentioned before, the conundrum, there was just that smack in the back of this song that just...
Which is also just a great Tom Waits pun as
yes.
well.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. And yeah.
Do you hear that? Sorry, do you hear that little bit of like accordion or pump organ that sort of cameos right at the end? It just brings it back to that carnival theme as well.
Yes.
Tom's been ploughing this field since One from the Heart with the Circus Girl, and he does it so well, really.
He does. This is...
I'm glad he doesn't overuse it like in Frank's Wild Years. Actually.
No, there is definitely an economy of instrumentation throughout this album. Like all the songs do feel different, but they also feel very much of a mode. They all seem to work well. And I think the next song as well, which is, as you mentioned before, was chosen as a single, which Going Out West, there's a lot I enjoy about this song. There really is. And I love the sound of the guitar in this song. The distortion and the thrust of that song is absolutely fantastic. You're starting off with the constant sort of tremolo, the heavy guitar going on, the thrust and thumb, again, of that fizzy overdrive, as I was saying. The idea of going out west, the idea of expansion, of escape. He talks about Tony Francisco in the start, who I had to look up. I don't know if you did any research on him. Apparently, again, similar to the guy I mentioned before, he was a TV star. This guy from the 60s and 70s, most notable for NBC's Name of the Game. He was usually known for playing a playboy or a detective. So Tom is just kind of bringing that up because he says Tony Francisco used to date my mother. So and there's a lot of lines like this in this song where we've gone from In the Colosseum, very serious song. There's a lot of songs like this where it's kind of like quite silly. You know, I look good in the shirt. My parole officer will be proud of me. I know karate, voodoo too. I got hair on my chest. Like it's a lot.
I look good.
I look good with my shirt. Yeah.
I love the reference to Hannibal. Actually, that's the one I was a little more interested in because obviously that's an allusion to the Carthaginian general Hannibal, who famously fought against the Romans in the Second Punic War. Blah blah blah. But he had the impossible task of travelling west across the Alps with a whole army plus 24 war elephants, and obviously, spoiler alert for that battle as well. It obviously didn't go too well because it was such a dangerous journey. Tom again in this song is back in that snake oil salesman. You know, we kind of do believe him. It's a kind of a cerebral, rocky version. You know, that's trying to sweep us away with some fast-paced blues. You know, these kind of songs litter Waits' discography, like Hang On St. Christopher and Straight to the Top. You know, he's just trying to make us come along for the ride, and it's interesting because, you know, you can kind of break down the truth and the lies of his snake oil salesman. And, you know, some of these claims are pretty overly simplistic and wild, so should we really trust this guy? It's also like the perfect 90s gateway Tom Waits song, I feel.
It is very grungy, alternative. Yeah, definitely.
Like, you could put this on for any sort of alt-rock, hard rock, casual metal fan, and they'd eat this shit up. Although, it's very much kind of hard to sustain the illusion that he's going to do any more songs like this. So you'd have to trap them fast with like a Step Right Up or an Underground.
Yeah. It's a bit of an anomaly, definitely. He doesn't really return to this kind of mode of songwriting again. And I like this track. I don't know why I don't love this song. I don't quite know what's missing here for me to absolutely adore it. But I do.
You know what? I get what you mean.
I just
lyrics aren't bad. It's not sung bad.
No,
Guitar's great.
Fun. Yeah.
Maybe a better solo.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah. But
Seal
it's
it.
nice to hear Tom just again kind of on his soapbox, but less like proclamatory in terms of political aspirations, and just going for like the more fun thing here.
He likes playing these sort of self-satisfied, arrogant, unhinged, deranged.
And definitely check out the video as well. Obviously, you mentioned it in your music video article, but I rewatched that. I believe it was directed by Bob Dylan's son. Was it Jesse Dillon?
Who has done all of the best Tom Waits music videos, and it is just a parody of a sort of 90s hard rock music video, like lots of steam being blown in his face. I think you know the sort of devilish goggle Tom is nothing more than a parody, really. I don't think he particularly wore it whenever he was touring.
No.
It is just this middle finger to the whole music industry, really. Funnily enough, though, this might be my earliest encounter with a Tom Waits song, whether or not I knew it. It's on the soundtrack to Fight Club.
Oh, is it?
And the song plays when we finally meet the fully formed titular Fight Club, and you hear Going Out West playing in the bar before they go downstairs.
Interesting. That's cool.
So I think this might be the early, because I know there's a song in Shrek 2,
Little Drop of Poison,
plays Little Drop of Poison, yeah. That's a lot of people's like sort of earliest inception of
well, actually,
Tom
Jesus
Waits.
Gonna Be Here is on Domino, Tony Scott's Domino.
Yeah, but come on, the amount of people who have seen Domino compared to Shrek 2.
That's true, and they are incomparable, yeah.
Kids aren't watching Keira Knightley's lackluster thriller right now.
No, they're not. Big up Mickey Rourke as well, but they're not. Yeah, I don't have much left to say on Going Out West. It's always been one of those tracks for me where I think I should like it more, but it's not one that I'm going to really put on outside of researching this show.
Yeah, Tom had quite a bit to say on it, but it's kind of brief. He said, "Yeah, that one's out there. I figured. Let's do a rocker. We'll just slam it and scream." And my wife said, "No, this is about those guys who come to California from the Midwest with very specific ideas in mind." That's how the line about Tony Francisca fits. There are people who come to California with less than what they go in. A phone number that somebody gave you, for a psychic who used to work with Anne Margaret. And maybe if I meet him, maybe I can get somewhere. Maybe if I play my cards right.
Yeah.
Back on that radio interview, he also said, the best songs I feel are written fast. You just make them. You just need a little bone and a little hair, and you can make them real fast. This song was written real fast, and I think you can tell it doesn't really have that sort of that. You know what? If I had to place a bet on a song that Kathleen had almost little to no involvement in on this album, it could be Going Out West.
Yeah, I think so. Whereas I think Murder in the Red Barn got her all over it purely in its avocation of history. So we're talking about Hang Down Your Head was another like Kathleen number that was based on kind of an old murder kind of mystery kind of thing, and Murder in the Red Barn very similarly. I actually did a bit of research on this. I know you're more of a fan of this song than me, and I actually found the kind of context a little bit more interesting in the song, I have to say. This is found this online. Murder in the Red Barn actually refers to a murder in Victorian rural England. A man named Richard Cawdor had a relationship with a dairymaid, but after an argument he killed her with a spade in a red barn on the farm and buried her under a pile of straw. He then ran off to the Isle of Man, but wrote to the girl's mother pretending to be the girl herself, telling her that she had settled down with a man. However, her woman had a dream of the murder and the body buried beneath the straw. After the body was found, Richard Cawdor was found guilty on the strength of the dream and was sentenced to be hanged. Yeah, strength of a dream. And the British public was intrigued by the murder in the court case, and foot lengths of the hanging rope were sold for a guinea each. The story was made into a musical melodrama called, funnily enough, The Murder in the Red Barn.
Wow. I think Tom found that in a newspaper clipping from 1921, and the actual murder, it took place 93 years before that as well. So you are right. This song does have that real history to it, and I love how it does play with that sort of things look okay. Yes, why is it odd that there's blood on an axe? There is a lot of killing to do around the farm. this is for me one of those Tom Waits songs that I did originally write off very early on, during my first rounds of Waitsian exploration. But after several revisits, this has become a serious favourite of mine, and is a highlight of the album.
A highlight of the album.
It's a mixture of a really cool Tom Waits spoken word song and the more rhythmic things that he's doing on Bone Machine. Funnily enough for me though, I remember on YouTube there was this video with the very enticing title of "I jammed with Tom Waits!" exclamation point. So instantly, like, oh my god, there's a video of Tom that exists playing with a fan, and the moment you open the video, and even before you click play, in the description of it, it says "just kidding." And it's actually footage of Tom doing an early demo for the song with Jim Jarmusch filming it in his garage. Cool. And while I was kind of irked by my susceptibility to a clickbait title, the rendition therein is actually very interesting. It features both a lot more acoustic and slide guitar, much more prominently, and you don't have that sort of atmospheric creaky chair, creaky barn door, whistling wind atmosphere attached to it yet. But if you're a fan of the song, it really is worth checking out. Lyrically, this is where the song's strengths lie. It's nice to see him not go too over the top on the banjo. It is a very, we have been brought down again. I don't know if we needed to be brought this far down considering the next song, but Barney Hoskins actually, in his interview with Mojo again, asked Tom, could you have written songs like Bone Machine's Murder in the Red Barn if you hadn't moved to the country? And Tom Waits said, I buy the local papers every day and they're full of car wrecks, and I guess it all depends on what kind of paper that attracts you. I'm always drawn to these terrible stories. I don't know why. Black Irish? My wife's the same way. She comes from an Irish family and she's drawn to the shadows and the darkness. Murder in the Red Barn is just one of those stories. My favourite line is, there's always some killing you gotta do around the farm. And it's true. Yeah. And Tom has moved out to the country now. He's trying to record in the country, and these are just the harsh realities of a life out there. This song could go all the way back to on the frontier with cowboys. This is a real. To say Americana sounds kind of
it is though, isn't it? It definitely has that aspect to it.
But this could be a farm out in the Urals of Siberia, really, if you wanted to push it anywhere. There is that danger that without civilization, without something like the New York presented on Rain Dogs, where there is danger because there's too many people about. It's totally just flipped the other way, and this is dangerous because no one will ever know.
Yes.
There aren't enough people.
And the sense of suspicion, like you say, because obviously there is always murder around a farm, so it makes sense that you could almost hide a murder. But I always love the end of the song when it's kind of he's talking about the elements of kind of everyone's looking over their shoulder now. So he says, now a lady can't do nothing without folks' tongues wagging. Is that blood on the tree, or is it autumn's red blaze? So the sense of it's natural, but it's kind of counter to nature as well. There's an excellent duality in the song. But for me, the reason why I don't like the track, one, I think it's a bit too long. Two, I think it suffers from the same problem that Telephone Call from Istanbul off Frank's Voyages, where the main thrust of the instrumentation's a little weak for me. I don't find it very compelling. And I think the chorus is quite boring. It's just him going, murder in the red barn, murder. It's like, yeah, okay. I just, it's not very stimulating as a listener.
I find it very stimulating. I think it's just it's Tom having a lot of fun with a very fun story. It fits into his catalogue like a glove, really. And I think he mentioned in Thrasher magazine again that originally barns were all painted with the blood of dead animals, and that was before they even had paint. So again, reinforcing that real murder is as old as time, and it's always going to happen. There are these things that we can't escape. We can't escape the end of the earth. We can't escape the total random harsh reality of nature, really. And that is personified with the outback and the wilds, and living on the farm. There is this presence of nature, and you can just be taken away, like the little girl in A Little Rain or Georgia Lee. Something random can happen, and there's nothing you can do about it, really, and it'll just be something that's in the newspaper for Tom to read the next day.
Yeah, really. And just finally as well, the song is full of interesting words, and one of the words that caught my ear was manzanita. and I did a little bit of research, and apparently that is, according to Webster's Dictionary, that is any of various Western North American evergreen shrubs of the heath family. So it's Tom just...
I knew that. Everyone knew that.
Everyone knows manzanitas, right? So we go from an okay track to another okay track, Black Wings, which I know you're not too much of a fan of. I don't mind this song. I think this is Tom loves these songs. Tom loves these songs where he's detailing, the kind of shape-shifting changer who, you'll never know, the kind of Kerouac figure, the beat figure, the guy who's kind of, move between the raindrops kind of thing. And there's some interesting moments here. I like some of the detail that he's building. He says of this character, well, he once killed a man with a guitar string. He's been seen at tables with kings. Well, he once saved a baby from drowning. There are those that say beneath his coat there are wings, which I really like. And they also talk about they broke a lot of canes on his hide, which reminds me of a really early Superman comic where, I think Superman's been like a bad boy or something. It's like really early when he's like a child, and like his dad tries to smack him on the ass, and his dad like breaks his hand because obviously Superman's like completely indestructible. And like the idea in Black Wings as well as the cane there and stuff like that. So I like that. My favourite thing about this song really is the guitar. I think the guitar is incredibly tasteful throughout. Really, really good work by Joe Gore. And there's a nice bit in the middle where it kind of, the guitar, like the line, it's kind of hard to explain. It feels like the amp's crumbling. It goes like it probably like belches and crumbles. It's quite cool. I don't really know how they got that sound, but
it's obviously some sort of
yeah.
It is quite Tom's in studio workings are almost as mysterious as him. Really,
yeah, so I mean, this is a guy who broke out of every prison, and everyone denies ever meeting him. I think it's a fun song. It's not necessarily one that I return to because it's one of those kind of spoken word tracks. It's kind of like Murder in the Red Barn, really, where I've heard it. I almost feel like there are some songs like there are certain Tom Waits songs that I will listen to all the time. Like I can't get enough of listening to them. And then the songs like Black Wings and Murder in Red Blonde where I kind of feel like I know them and there's no sense for me to go back and pursue it any further.
I think this is going to be a new sort of catchphrase for the show, but this feels like this would be at home buried amongst the tracks on Orphans for me. There's a bit of a consensus that this could be a weaker link in Bone Machine, especially in our social circle. Danny as well. He does not like this song. I find it rather hard to argue with them that this isn't a weak link. It's pretty fun, as is the guitar solo, but it's just a bit of a throwaway sound, really. The lyrics are, as we've said before, if there's a Tom Waits song that you don't like the instrumentation on, most likely you might like the lyrics or vice versa. And I do think that this has one of those great Tom Waits opening lines: "Take an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth." That's what they say in the Bible. Obviously he's stating his terms immediately, and like this is how the song, and possibly the rest of the album is meant to be viewed. That kind of primal sense of vengeance. And the dichotomy of the man that we read about in Black Wings, Tom addresses in that Ear magazine again, or EAR perhaps. I don't want to be caught with another gaffe. He said, "Right, unfortunately, someone saves a child's life seldom makes the headlines. Now someone who cuts a child's throat, that says something about who we are. The media have too much power, and that we let this happen. We all live within this complex matrix of large, eerie radio, with all the piping and wires exposed." For the Bone Machine press kit, he also goes on to mention how it's one of those characters that he really likes to play with. It's got another one of those little voices. I like my place with that voice. Little of that Marconi feeling. The government does business with people like that all the time, but they never did. But they always deny ever having met them. So it's got Tom's current religious fascinations involved. It's got his current political fascinations. It's also funny that Tom should cite Ennio Morricone as an influence for the song. Like you can hear that grandiose, sweeping neoclassic Western guitar lick that carries you across this sort of dark landscape that Tom's building. But obviously, Morricone, like literally a few days ago, has just won the Oscar for best original score. An award that Tom was once nominated for but failed to garner. But Marconi just won for The Hateful Eight, so that's great. Marconi's a great force in music. He's been nominated 6 times before, and it is great for him to be, finally get some recognition. Obviously, people will know him from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly theme. This song probably could have used a little more of that. Maybe if it was a bit more sweeping and cowboyish. It's not really a genre that I think Tom's ever really explored that much.
Maybe Yesterday's Here kind of has elements of that, doesn't it? Sort of that
yeah,
panorama.
But he is more of a noir fan. About midway through the song, there are these kind of frizzy little interferences and, like I said, these heavy bass drum smackings that were quite fun, and I wish the song had utilised them more and took a little further like that. And I think with a lot of these Tom Waits songs that I'm a bit lackluster with, I always feel that I wish he just took things that could have gone further, a little further. It feels like he's holding back a little because there isn't that much to give.
Yeah. Black Wings is. It's interesting because he plays it on the VH1 Storytellers, so clearly to him it is quite an important song. But
Black Wings is a black sheep.
Yeah, really. It's not really for me. I prefer Whistle Down the Wind, which we follow up, which very much feels like a Who Are You kind of, another kind of almost ballad for Tom. Like for me, it's interesting because it's Tom putting himself in a very weak position. Tom putting himself as kind of like someone who has lived their life in the middle of nowhere, never really experienced anything, but who has the language to express this and express the desire for wanting to go further. He says, "I've yelled and I've cursed. If I stay here, I'll rust. I'm stuck like a shipwreck out here in the dust." We have the familiar staggered piano intro, which I think is perfected best in Picture in a Frame, incredible song by Mule Variations. That rising, dreamy guitars, a lot of nice harmonics as well on the fretboard. It's sad and searching. Anyone that's familiar with the Canadian author Alice Munro will probably feel like a lot of the images in her short stories are very similar to this. The sense of the small town and the desire to escape. Especially the final stanza, I think, is fantastic. Really sad as well, where he talks about sometimes the music from a dance will carry across the plains, and the places that I'm dreaming of, do they dream of me? There are places where they never sleep and the circus never ends. So I will take the Marley-Bone coach and whistle down the wind. Now, Marley-Bone coach, I'd never heard that expression before, and I was really interested in it. I did a bit of research online, and there's actually quite a few explanations about what that means, and I found quite a good one. So apparently, to go by the Marley-Bone coach, which is spelt Marylebone, as in the London train. Not Marley-Bone. On the website it says Marley-Bone, but I think it's Marylebone. To go by Marylebone coach meant to go on foot. It appears firstly in a Mary Elizabeth Braddon, who's quite a famous Victorian author, called Charlotte's Inheritance in 1868. It says, "The cabmen are trying it on anyhow just now," thought Mr. Selden. This is a quote. "But I don't think they'll try it on with me. And if they do, there's the Marley-Bone stage. I'm not afraid of a 5-mile walk." There was indeed a stagecoach which ran the 4 miles from Marylebone to the city of London, taking 2.5 hours to get there and 3 hours to come back. This duration partly being accounted for by the extremely bad roads of the early period, but mainly by an unnecessary long stop and inn on the way. The earliest reference found is apparently in a court case at the Owl Bailey in 1822, in which a young man was found guilty of stealing 2 handkerchiefs from a passenger on the Marley-Bone coach. It's interesting as well. The very famous diarist Samuel Pepys mentions it as well. Pepys wrote,
really?
Pepys mentions in his diary in the 31st of July 1667, talks about going to Marylebone and basically how long it was to get there, and this kind of like makes the connection. So therefore, it's kind of an expression for going slowly, or not even getting there. So that final line of Tom talking about, "I will take the Marley-Bone coach and whistle down the wind," kind of compounds the sense that he's not getting anywhere. And I just thought that was a really nice reference. Like, it's really off-kilter reference. Like the fact that he's referencing this old Victorian novel. Again, probably Kathleen there, kind of, tapping on the shoulder, giving a little thing here and there. But I like this song. I think this is a nice song to have in the background, but it doesn't... Again, it's not up there with the incredibly premium caliber ballads of Mule Variations. I think Tom's still finding his melodic feet here in that sense.
See, for me, as we both saw on Frank's Wild Years and Night on Earth, Tom is not afraid to repeat songs and do them in different ways and give us the same song with a different twist. And I literally thought this was going to be A Little Rain again.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
like with those opening piano chords, I expect him to instantly start singing about a man with missing fingers again. For me, this song is frankly the one I'm least familiar with. Upon several re-listens to this album, it's failed to
I know what you mean.
make any lasting connection or stick to me in any kind of way. Doesn't to whistle down the wind to mean to defame a person?
No, I think it just means to kind of go, to kind of leave, I think. Although arguably, if you're whistling down the wind, then you're accomplishing nothing, aren't you? Because your whistle won't be heard over the wind.
Well, it says here, like, the cognate phrase blown upon is more familiar. The idea is to whistle down the wind that the reputation of a person's may be blown upon.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's just I like the humbleness, the fragility of Tom in this song, but as a song, as a melody that sticks with you, it's not there, you know.
It's very much like those more saccharine songs off Heart Attack and Vine for me. Lyrically, we've got some red guitars and red houses, so we're keeping our way, in the album, but. Despite the world being on fire and the sky being a bit red, it really doesn't feel like it's a part of Bone Machine for me. It kind of just feels like another Little Rain again, with a bit of semi-apocalyptic imagery kind of thrown in to tie it all together. Whereas obviously, as you've gone on about, the Marleyborn coach is the more evocative image for me.
Yeah,
and it just feels a bit more scattershot and doesn't feel like a very cohesive element on the album.
No.
Have you found out who Tom Yans is? Obviously, the subtitle for this song is For Tom Yans, or Jans. He claimed in the Bone Machine press kit, so obviously this is going to have to be taken with a big pinch of salt. But he said he's an old friend of ours who died in '83, a songwriter and friend of Kathleen's and mine, from the central coast of California, kind of a Steinbeck upbringing in a small town. We dedicated it to him. He wrote Love in Arms. Elvis loved it. He used to play with Mima Farina. It was written about by another friend, but it was the kind of song that Tom Yans would have written, so he was there in spirit. Kurt Gegenhuber, who wrote the Rain Dogs Listerv discussion list in 2000. He basically he said, "I'm convinced that the dedication to Yans aside, Tom's Whistle Down the Wind and possibly several other songs on Bone Machine were partly inspired by the novel by Mary Haley Bell, also called Whistle Down the Wind, or maybe the 1962 film based around it, which was actually produced by Richard Attenborough."
Oh, wow.
The novel and movie are about some kids in a small rural town who find an escaped convict hiding in the family's barn. So this is kind of like a Famous Five type story. This is really they become convinced that the man is Jesus Christ and hiding from the adults in the community whom they distrust. It's obviously regarded as a children's story with a heavy allegory and New Testament symbolism. Obviously, it shares quite a few things that recur in Tom Waits' work. The song and the story are both about a child being in the respective atmosphere of small town life, in which Kathleen seems to have grown up, and it seems clear that it seems hard to see a clear connection beyond that. However, when you place the song alongside others on the album, especially Jesus Gonna Be Here or I Don't Want to Grow Up, the connections of M.H. Bell's novel, the movie, and Bone Machine really start to accumulate. Of course, Waits seems to free associate, and there's no need to choose an either-or way between Yans and Bell as an inspiration for any of the songs, however. So that's just a nice little.
Yeah, I've not heard of that novel or film, but yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure I've heard that plot. It does sound very sort of All America Steinbecky, or an Enid Blyton. Oh no, we found like a German spy in the war, and we have to protect him, something like that. But as you know, what if I was Tom Yans, I would have rather Tom had dedicated the next song to me. This song is, on Nighthawks at the diner, he has Better Off Without a Wife. This is kind of like a little spiritual sequel to that, really. This sort of unabashed flaunting of shirking one's responsibility. Yes. He's re-tapping into that mindset. Even the title itself, I Don't Want to Grow Up, is spelt with an immaturity.
Yes, yeah.
Before we get on to sort of fully gushing over the song and the many anecdotes I'm sure we both have about it, have you heard the Scarlett Johansson version?
Oh yeah,
of
absolutely.
This?
I mean, the entire Scarlett Johansson album is utter crap, and
anywhere I lay
Yeah,
my
yeah.
head.
I mean, it's absolutely shit. I literally cannot rally against it more because she takes the life out of every single Tom Waits song. Her and Dave Sitek, who I really respect Dave Sitek. I think he's a brilliant producer and writer, but I don't know what the fuck they were thinking. And I think this "I Don't Want to Grow Up," which is such a fun song, such a barreling number, just, you know, Black Widow, what the hell are you doing? Like, you know, just the worst,
Widow.
the worst. Like, you know.
Oh, she takes its sort of punky edge and turns it into this weird Pet Shop Boys meets Karen O disaster. Because like, I Don't Want to Grow Up is one of the most upbeat and fulfilling tracks on the album. It fits that Tin Pan Alley junkyard nature of the album perfectly with this real jaunty, sing-alongable sound. I remember when I first got into Tom Waits. I actually got this album ready for a trip that you and me went on.
Yes, yeah.
What, about 6 years ago is this now?
Yeah, so in the summer of 2010, myself and Sam and a few of our friends went,
including
Danny, who designed the thumbnail and the merchandise. We went to Taizé in South France, and it's crazy to think that one of the books that I was taking with me was Low Side of the Road, which I, at that point, was reading for the first time. And obviously we're all getting into what...
Full circle.
Yeah, it's insane. And we're all getting into Waits at the time. And I remember distinctly, you wouldn't stop singing this song, and I was getting pissed off with you. You kept singing it all the time, and you just kept...
It's easy to...
Yeah, it is. And... So yeah, for that reason alone, this song really sticks to me. But also, anyone that's played this song on guitar knows that it's basically two chords. It's D to an A7,
yes.
Which, if you know that fingering, is literally you're anchoring your third finger and moving your first and your second. So it's really, really simple, which kind of makes sense, perhaps, why the Ramones covered it. A lot of people think it's a Ramones song, and it's not. And I don't really like the Ramones version. I've never liked the way the Ramones sing, to be honest. I think it's very dead.
You know, like Tom... with these, you know, droning, lively chords, it props up that theme again of immaturity. Tom's quite, an accomplished guitarist, and he's rejecting his own skill that we know he's learned and developed over the years.
Some songs don't need it, do they? Some songs just need
it. Like anything overly complex really would have sold short the narrative for this song, really. Like, this song for me kind of, again, it had a certain resonance with me, and I think it does, with a lot of people, just for the fact, its simplicity in both theme and composition. None of us particularly want to ascend from the sort of carefree nature of childhood into adulthood.
No.
And the crossing barrier is always painful.
It's made even more painful because Tom saying this, Tom, who we know at this point in his career, incredibly successful, he's never made any concessions, he's a brilliant artist, even he is talking about how hard the world is, and for people like us, laymen, who know how hard the world is, just makes it even worse, you know what I mean? He's talking about, how do you move in a world of fog that's always changing things? Makes me wish I could be a dog. I mean, I wish I could be a dog, Tom, I really do. You got no worries here and stuff, and he's balancing... What's great is it's a juxtaposition between the great, the horribleness of the world that you don't want to deal with, and then he's kind of being quite juvenile. So you go from world of fog, everything's changed, to I don't want to learn how to count. I don't want to be filled with doubt, which is a very human thing. I don't want to learn to count, so it's kind of regressing, to that nascent idea. But and again, obviously it's called I Don't Want to Grow Up, but I love that I don't want to, constantly repeating in all the choruses. It's fantastic.
Yeah,
This accumulation of details.
Like a 3-year-old,
yeah. It's almost like a little hissy fit, isn't it? Stamping his feet.
But it's weird that at this point in his career, we said before, what would happen if Kathleen heard Better Off Without a Wife? What if Tom Waits' kids hear this song? He's 43 at this point. I believe both of his children have been born at this point, and he's shifted into this punky, universally rebellious, and almost admirably vicariously self-involved. That makes it just so irresistible in its sentiment, and It's like Tom Waits just said, right, how does a punk song work and what does it do? And he broke it down and wrote one of the best anti-maturity anthems ever. And Tom lets the audience know that it's okay that if you're not happy with this adult world that you live in, throughout this album we've seen the adult world. It has so much darkness, political corruption, murder, suicide, visions of the apocalypse. And just to say that, the adult world is pretty awful, and no soul would blame you for not wanting to enter it. Really.
And the minor tragedies of maturing are just as depressing as the world ending. He says, seems like folks turn into things that they never want. The only thing to live for is today. And that's very true, really. You shouldn't hold to any dogma other than existing and maybe getting better as a person. And, I'd rather stay here in my room, nothing out there but sad and gloom. I don't want to live in a big old I love the on Grand Street. Like Grand Street's such a Tom Waits street as well, isn't it? Like,
Yes.
I'm thinking of Christmas Card when he talks about Euclid Avenue. This guy has the best place names ever. But love this track. I love the production as well. We have two guitars. You can hear the acoustic strings playing, then you can hear that kind of faded out back of the amp sound as well. There's that barreling chug-a-chug, almost Johnny Cash style, like you say punk, but it's almost further back than that. It's got this quite mythic sense to it, and it's really out there. This is not indicative of any other song on the album, really. It's not dark in the obvious sense, but it's almost darker than everything else because it plays on a very human fear that's very relatable, more so than the world ending.
When he hears his parents fighting, and things like
exactly.
that. He does say, like, back in Ear magazine, it depends on how you look at it, though. Making love with a beautiful woman on a bed with silk sheets while you smoke reefer African and drink a glass of Napoleon cognac is still pretty exciting. Adult life also has its good moments.
It does. And Tom. Sorry.
I was going to say, in an article called Ghost in the Machine for Rock World, he said, because I utterly adore my wife and kids, though, I had no choice but to grow up fast. You can't bring up kids if you're still one yourself. On top of that, being a father has a lot of work and advantages. You get healthier, life is quieter, and you can concentrate on work better. I am my work, and only when I work can I express myself and what's inside me. I learn more about myself through it. To get to that stage, I have to have peace and quiet, and family is a vital part of that. So, despite the fact that he's shirking it off, it's kind of just like him in a little sort of immature way, just saying, look at what I did to sort of mature to become a father, really. It's not a rejection of it. It's just saying, this is what I have to do to not be a kid myself anymore, and no one wants to do that. So, it's not nice for anyone.
No, and I like at the end he says, I don't want to float a broom, which is kind of a nice reference to his early pizza days. I can't wait to get off work, which I really like. I think this is a absolutely fantastic song, an obvious single as well. And I'm not sure how successful it was when the video came out, but the video's pretty good.
The video's fantastic. It does start with a bit of the next song, which we'll get onto in a moment. But I just love the way how in the video Tommy's trapped under a table like a kid at a diner with his parents, and he's literally too big for the stage. He's too big for the world around him, and he's trapped. He's playing a little child's guitar, and then obviously Jesse Dillon was kind of realizing, we can't just have this single shot for 3 minutes, Tom. So it just cuts back to him footage of him riding around on a tricycle. Yeah. which is just like, cool. We can run with that. You're Tom Waits. No one will question it. I love how he said he mentioned that it was written too fast. This is the kind of song you write in the car, but sometimes those are the best ones. This happened real fast. We only did it a couple of times and we just slammed it. We said, well, we better not do this again because it'll just sound stupid. And this was the only version that we went out with. We said, okay, that'll do. You go home. You can come on the trip. I haven't played that song live. It's a good one to have. It is a sing-along. It's like a hootenanny, and it really is. It is just a very enjoyable, easily accessible Tom Waits track, and there are no guesses why it was the single, but it totally doesn't represent the album as any single should on any level.
No, it doesn't. No, I think Going Out West does a much better thing, and
it's like picking Within You Without You for the Sgt. Pepper single,
yes,
which obviously it didn't have, but the point stands.
Let me get up on it. I believe, I don't have my notes to hand on this one, but I believe that Tom said something along the lines of like, this is what he wanted the whole album to sound like, and this is what he liked best. And obviously this is I think it's like 50 seconds. It's essentially an instrumental of just weird kind of collage of offbeat sounds that I kind of don't want it on the album. I kind of want to go from I Don't Want to Grow Up into that feel, because I think that's the perfect kind of like juvenile into looking back on your life kind of 1-2 punch. And then in the middle you just have this kind of weird, I don't dislike it because it's weird, I like it because it's weird. I just think in terms of the thematic consistency of the album, it's maybe a bit of an anomaly.
Yeah, like perhaps it could have been a proper interlude, very very much like the one between Such a Scream
Yes.
and All Stripped
Yes, yes.
Down. It does feel like, you know, the sister track to that. And if you'd done a whole album of something like this, I think I really would have enjoyed it. Like Tom going
Oh,
full
yeah,
on
yeah.
industrial. You know, this song kind of like teases another better, perhaps longer lost track, like From Within. You know, this is the end of the world. Not everything's going to be that clean and simple. That wind up crank gear at the start, though, is wonderfully enjoyable to listen to over and over again. And obviously, Tom is always looking for these non-instrument sounds that he can always pop in. The most famous one is probably the creaky chair on Shore Leave
Yeah.
from Trombones. This is just like a schizoid mind frame song, really. You know, like he's going for total like vocal manipulation here, and like it's almost like he's singing words, but their meaning has been long lost. So there is that great sense of mystery, but it's sadly though nowhere near as consequential as something like Dave the Butcher, Midtown, or even something like Beatrice's theme from
Oh,
our
yeah, I
last
love that,
episode,
yeah.
Night on Earth. Like that had a lot more menace and swagger to it.
It's probably the most throwaway Tom instrumental incident, really. This, I mean, it's just yeah, it's fun and it's a nice little curiosity, but
we talk about this a lot, but it's weird how we nailed it with Closing Time, like straight away with his first
oh
instrumental.
man, what a beautiful track. But yeah, there isn't really much to say on this, is it? It's like it's just a little 50-second blip before we get into the final song on the album.
Well, just one last little thing. How you were saying how he kind of feels like this is why he wanted the whole album to be done. In the Bone Machine press release kit, he says how he did all the preliminary recording for this song at his house, like before the album started, and he ended up liking anything better than we'd done in the whole studio for a while. And he was actually threatening to pull the plug on the whole project and just come home and sing the songs into a little Sony tape recorder. And you know what? If he had done that, I think it would have been pretty damn interesting, really. Like he will get more homey, as we say on things like Orphans. Another funny thing about the production of this album that we should just quickly mention is the album recording was split in two, wasn't it? Because there was a certain Francis Ford Coppola movie that Tom had to go and play Renfield in. So you know, perhaps this might show why there may be two distinctly different types of songs on this album. Perhaps all the piano ballads were done after, and all this heavy rocky stuff was done before. But we do now come to a song that really doesn't fit either of those. It is a bluesy ballad. It is That Feel.
That
Tom,
Feel, yeah.
That
Back
Feel,
with
yeah.
our old friend Keith.
I don't want to talk about it if I'm honest.
I have to say, but
Hashtag Bet Midler too.
I have to say, just recently on Netflix, I watched a documentary about Keith Richards that was just came out, and there's a brilliant section with Tom Waits in it, like 5 or 6 minutes of just interviewing Tom Waits about Keith Richards. Check it out on Netflix, and it's around the Bad As Me period that they shot the footage, and you actually see Keith Richards doing the backing vocals to Last Leaf with Tom in the studio, and it's awesome footage. So yeah, I think. I don't know if I like this more than Last Leaf. That Feel has grown on me so much. I have found myself singing this song so much. I just think it's such an addictive, beautiful song. I think the gospel attack is the melody is absolutely there. You know, it's so resonant. And like That Feel, I love the idea. Like, what is he actually talking about? I'm not sure. I guess it's the soul or the sense in the music, or, you know.
You're kind of meant to know, aren't you?
You are meant to know. And like, there's just, again, similar to... Who Are You in the Jail of Your Arms, that kind of note that fell a little flat for me. There is just, I really hate, like, I love this song, but I really hate when he says it's harder to get rid of than tattoos. It's like you've spent this entire song saying how like immortal that feel is. You can whip it like a dog. You can,
but you can get rid of tattoos.
That's what I don't understand. You get rid of tattoos really easily. Like, you can get rid of tattoos, like, you know, by just paying maybe £100. I don't know how much it is to get rid of tattoos. I don't have a tattoos, but you know what I mean. It's just kind of like that really falls flat for me. But regardless of that, I think it's beautiful, and I think you can feel Keith in this track. You know, you can hear him as well. This is definitely a kind of great number, but it's just a beautiful delivery by Tom. I think his vocals on this track are so good. You can throw it off a bridge, you can lose it in a fire. You know, again, what is he referring to? I don't know, but I don't care. It's a powerful number. It's a boozy sing along. I'm really glad that it finishes the album. I think you know, it's a fantastic closer.
Tom himself calls it a beverage song, which is just hilarious in itself. Obviously, my thoughts on Keith Richards is gone into extreme detail on our Rain Dogs episode. But for me, I kind of relegated this song for a while just because I knew Keith Richards was on it. But once I'd heard that, boom, well, there's one thing you can, and like your pants, your shirt, and your shoes, like with that very, very satisfying rhyming scheme. This is actually the better of the Keith Richards songs so far, and I think as a graph, it does just keep getting better and better. The faded guitar is a bit more prominent, and it does admittedly sound more Tom Waitsy.
I think
or maybe Tom's style has just evolved now into something that Keith Richards could always better have worked with.
I think maybe Tom was maybe a little starstruck because Keith would have been a bigger figure than Tom in the 80s.
He's less gushy,
but now it's like Tom is such a mythic figure. I mean, I know Keith Richards is this legend hero, but Keith Richards has not written the sort of songs Tom's written. You can't compare these two as artists. You know what I mean? Like Keith's a decent guitar player and an interesting blues man and a great character in interviews, an illustrious figure, but he ain't Tom Waits creatively. And I think this is Keith kowtowing to Tom. Feels like a Tom song with a bit of Keith here and there.
Well, like I was going to say, it actually feels like it's more of a collaboration than say either one of them leading each other, which was the case last time. It is literally just Tom Waits on drums, Richards on guitar, them doing harmonies, and that's it. And they have fun with the idea of them working together again without making it too Bone Machine-y, and I think that works in its favour. It's simplified and reined in for a grand old fashioned finale, really. Tom actually talks extensively about working with Richards at this point. He said for the Bone Machine press kit, we wrote a bunch of songs, but that's the only one that made it in there. So that's interesting. Some of these may end up on Orphans with just him singing. Who knows? Yeah, he writes songs in a similar way that I do, which you kind of circle it, you sneak upon it. It was a real joy to write with him. You can't drink with him, but you can write with him. It was really a joy. I felt like I'd known him for a long time. He's made out of very strong stock, He's like pirate stock. He's like those shadows in music, and he's totally mystified by music like a kid. He finds great joy in it, madness and abandon, and it's still there very much for him. He looks at the guitar and he gets his eyes all big and he starts shaking his head, and he's made out of something that music likes to be around, which is a great quote. I actually love that. Tom himself on the KCA FM radio show said, "I love this song. We've played it hundreds of times, and then I made a version of it, and then I took it to New York, and here I was there, and he sang on it and played. I really have a soft spot for my heart for this song." So we can't really, despite our own opinions on the songs, like devalue the obviously great relationship he has with Keith Richards. Keith Richards on his first solo album credits Waits with sort of giving him the confidence to work like that. But in terms of like Tom Waits' album closers, it's very satisfying. It's very it's very fun. I do like the guitar work. I'm glad Tom's not just gushing over and bending over and letting Waits have it. And letting Richards have his way with him. But again, I Don't Want to Grow Up would have ended it better. It would have ended it on a much more powerful note. And it's weird that Tom never ends on a high energy. He always seems to end on a low energy song.
Anywhere I Lay My Head, Come On Up to the House, a pretty high energy. But I know what you're saying.
Oh yeah, but they're not like heavy.
No. But that feels a bit more of a retreating. I think that feels more powerful closer than I Don't Want to Grow Up. I think if I Don't Want to Grow Up's a bit more of an obvious closer, as that feels kind of a nice conclusive end to this thing. And it's nice that we don't end in more macabre. There's a bit of hope here, isn't there, in that feel, which you don't really feel in most of the Bone Machine songs.
Yes.
Maybe that feel is hope. I don't know.
Yeah, despite the world has been destroyed, politicians are running wild and there are murderers everywhere.
There's a guy with black wings
still got
around.
That feel.
That's Bone Machine, I think.
I don't think Tom could resist not giving us a little glimmer of hope. Like, he's taken us on such a dark journey with Bone Machine. He couldn't end that on a downer. I mean, you've started with the destruction of the world, so you can't end with a bad note, really.
No. So as we always do our most favourite song and least favourite song. So we'll start off least favourite. What's your least favourite track on Bone Machine? My least favourite track's going to have to be Whistle Down the Wind, purely just because it is a little rain again. Nothing really more to say about it. It hasn't stuck.
It isn't unique enough. It's got some pretty nice lyrics and imagery, but it kind of meanders for me.
Partly because I want to annoy you, but partly because I actually believe it. I'm going to go with Murder in the Red Barn. I think it's just not one I'm really going to revisit. But obviously, it's not too tough a decision to your heart, but it is a hard decision.
You think you think it's worse than Let Me Get Up on It?
I think Let Me Get Up on It's a bit more interesting than Murder in the Red Barn. I think Murder in the Red Barn a little bit too by numbers on an album where Tom's trying so many new things. But your favourite track, Sam? This is probably be quite difficult.
My favourite track. This has been a very difficult one.
This is
for
hard.
me, actually. There are a lot of good songs on here. There are a lot of songs that people will want us to pick. They'll be like, "Ooh, we've got to go for the obvious, big four at the start." But I think just because of my own personal relationship to the song, and because I know that you'll pick something at least more interesting and eclectic anyway, I'm gonna go with "I Don't Want to Grow Up."
Yeah, I knew that was coming. Great song. I'm probably gonna have to go with "All Stripped Down." I have to say.
Okay,
I love.
I'm okay with that.
As I extolled earlier, I just love the relationship that Tom and Joe Gore have on that song. I just think it's very unique and it's irresistible, really. And wow, I mean, Bow Machine as a whole, utterly genius. I really can't praise this album enough. It's stunningly consistent as well, and new ground as well. It doesn't really sound like Franks or Rain Dogs. It's a new direction. It's insane.
Definitely.
It's insane.
And obviously, this is going to be his last album with Island Records. We'll obviously cover why there was a shift in the next episode, but we are going to be going on from this album, which is kind of like already a seminal classic album. But obviously, next week we do have slightly bigger fish to fry, as it were, as it is going to be the sort of the last of the big three. If there were going to be Tom Waits albums that were carved into a mountain,
Black Rider next, I should say.
Oh, is it Black Rider next?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! So we're going to have another little slower one. If anyone's seen the Black Rider play, please do get in contact with us.
Yeah, we are looking for copies of it, aren't we? We can't seem to.
Yeah, there are 2 copies of it online. There's a version in English that is shot by a potato, and you can't really see anything. Or there is a version that's shot really, really well with like close-ups and editing, but it's in German. So that's what we have to work with. But before we end the episode, we do have another little feature that we always like to sprinkle in. Welcome to Real Gone, where we discuss the filmography of Tom Waits. He is not just a singer; he's also a very adept actor. The film we've seen today. The film we are reviewing today is The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus.
You shouldn't drink. It's just flat out, I don't agree with you. Well, you are so right. You? Oh, shit. Oh, what do you want from me this time? I'll do anything. I know you will. By the way, your man lost his memory. Bloody useless.
Not my man.
Huh?
This little toe rag named Tony Shepard. Just tidying up. He runs a big charity. I don't trust him. But then again, you don't trust me either, do you?
Oh, just tell me what you want.
I just thought that last night when you were so upset that you could maybe use a little glimmer of hope. And maybe you could use a little bet.
It's over. It's over. Finito.
Oh, come on. It's never over. What do you got to lose? Look, you could end up winning. You could save her. What do you say? First to 5 souls.
First to 5? Huh? No tricks? No cheating?
No cheating.
That's a yes. Deal.
Okay. God, I love a betting man.
One of the later films from Terry Gilliam. The story itself follows the misadventures of Dr. Parnassus, played by Christopher Plummer, and his travelling band of performing misfits, which include just got to say the cast for this film is
unbelievable.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
we've got Lily Cole, we've got Andrew Garfield, we've got Vern Troyer in one of his best performances, and of course Tom Waits as the devil, he was born to play this role, and he was just waiting for and he and Parnassus are, unbeknownst to all but Parnassus and the devil himself, are locked in an eternity-long wager over the souls. We find ourselves in this modern technological world where fantasy is the mystical wonderments of a more innocent time have truly been lost forever, and it's about the nature of stories and storytelling, subjects we know Waits is very close to. It's a story about death and religion and the power of those tales on an audience who perhaps might not need them anymore. Like, do we need stories? Does the universe need stories? And then we suddenly just bump into Heath Ledger's mysterious lone wanderer figure hanging by the neck from London Bridge, and from there on things get a little more interesting as they have this sort of new wild card to help sort of beat the devil in his last play. This is one of those early Andrew Garfield films that I keep that I really like. Yeah. Actually, he's actually really good in sort of early unknown pre-Spider-Man career.
Yeah, he's a good actor. Yeah.
Lily Cole is painfully beautiful in this movie, and she's the perfect film personification of like innocence ready to be lost. Like, she has the most innocent face ever. But in terms of just the actual filmmaking, before we get on to Tom's sort of almost career-defining later performance, this is probably Gilliam's most confident, most accessible and enjoyable film and filmmaking to date. There's this great little there were little references to Python here and there. It's still got that same Brazil-esque weird imagery.
It's interesting actually, just to say, in 12 Monkeys, Earth Died Screaming is used. So
oh, really?
Gilliam has
Okay.
obviously been a Waits fan for quite a while.
Yes. We have these giant floating space jellyfish that rope drunkards. We have rivers of bottles. We have the sky that's bisected, half of it's nighttime, half of it's day, and then the river that like trails into the background suddenly raises up, and it's actually Tom Waits as the devil, as a cobra. It's a really fantastic.
The imagination is insane.
Yeah, visually. This film is great. I find that this is one of those sort of relegated to being viewed as okay. The plot is actually very good. It's very well acted. The story is very satisfying. It's obviously hampered by the death of Heath Ledger, who died halfway through production. But the rewrites are hilariously clever for managing to like whip this round, like not turn it into another sort of Don Quixote situation for Terry Gilliam. We have Johnny Depp, Colin Farrell, and Jude Law, all giving very good performances. I believe they all donated their paychecks to Heath Ledger's daughter to sort of secure her financial future. So all the baggage of this film is obviously there. It's got that Dark Knight baggage. You know what I mean? Like you can't not see it and sort of praise Heath Ledger's performance just because obviously it happened so tragically close to his death. Tom Waits in the film though is great. He is the devil. He's in full glitter and doom regalia. And he's instantly set up as this force of temptation. Like, he forces our soul to choose between either reaching total spiritual nirvana or choosing one last drink. And throughout his career, we've seen his seedy little acting skills and mannerisms, and he's always so convincing, no matter how salacious he obviously is. Like, Tom is enjoyably cruel as the devil in this film. He dances merry jigs around a very sad Christopher Plummer who's going to lose his daughter. He puffs away on a Cruella de Vil like cigarette holder, and like he just loves being the taunting villain. Like as we said, like he loves being the sort of the more crazier characters, like in Jesus Gonna Be Here or Going Out West. Tom Waits is so at home playing the devil. Like who knew there was a film out there where it was Tom Waits playing the devil, dancing with one of England's biggest high fashion models, and then he walks off with Paloma Faith for some reason. These weird little cameos that like just pop up everywhere. Tom's first full scene proper, where he cripples Parnassus' faith, is really inventive. He actually steals the voices of monks with this weird sort of bone machine-esque contraption where he just sort of sucks their mouths off. And whilst he does chew the scenery a little, he was always still born to play this role, and he's just seeing him on screen is so satisfying because he gets a lot of screen time, something that we've always bemoaned on this section, but he also just acts it well, and like everything he does is always really gratifying. Like the very last shot of him in the movie is offering an apple to two nuns. Like it's perfect, really. My favourite actual shot in the entire film though is this great little visual gag where Parnassus shows Lily Cole, his daughter's character, like the history of him and the devil, because the devil gave Parnassus immortality basically. from a bet, and the bet is they have to collect souls throughout history, and Parnassus always appears as sort of whatever deity was around at that time and in that country. So he appears as sort of a Christ-like figure, and then a Muhammad-type figure, and then a sort of a Hindu-like god, like appearing all over the world and that. But in every picture as well, there's Tom Waits dressed in the same 21st century bowler hat and cane. And it's very nice that, just to see the devil never changes. Like all of Gilliam's films, it's a little overstuffed and a little too long. But, the out of this world, Dali type imagery, a great Tom Waits performance, and a great cast overall, and some very sort of subdued, pulled back, yet very confident work from Terry Gilliam. Like, it gets a little bit crazy with all the CGI stuff later, but the stuff while they're in London is really, really fun. And that's all more than worth the price of the DVD alone. So yeah, I strongly recommend the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus.
Well, yeah, that wraps it up for today's Down in the Hole. Thank you so much for listening. Again, if you want to get in contact with us, TomWaitsPodcast@gmail.com, at TomWaitsPodcast on Twitter. We also obviously have the Redbubble shop as well, if you want to get...
We are raking it in. We're splitting it 3 ways with Danny. We've made over 20 pence each.
It's crazy.
It's great.
And yeah, so you get stickers and mugs, etc. on there. Just help support the podcast. Also do the blog, TomWaitsPodcast.wordpress.com. We'll be back soon with Black Rider, and then Black Rider, which is, I'm quite unfamiliar with Black Rider really, so that'll be a fun one. But from then on, it is just golden, really. I can't believe the run we're about to go from.
The lineup is fucking
from
crazy.
Mule to Alice to Orphans to Bad As Me to Real Gone to Blood Money to, it's good. Yeah, I can't wait. So thank you so much for listening as ever, and Sam, thank you as well for joining me as ever.
Yeah, Tom, this has been a fantastic episode. I've had
me too.
But like it just reflects how great of an album Bone Machine is. Even the songs you don't like, you can still talk about them.
Unbelievable album. So keep listening to Tom Waits, everyone, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Take care.
Is Kathleen Brennan. How do you do?
Fine, thanks.
Mrs. Tom Waits.
Yes.
How are you then? Now, you must be, how far back Irish are you with it?
As far back as I can remember. Third generation, my family is, though.
And where are you from?
I am from originally Illinois and then New Jersey.
And how did you meet this guy
Accidentally.
where? When?
Actually, I was a nun, and he fell asleep in the church, and I woke him up.
Now, that's not true.
It depends. No, we were both... I was working for Coppola Studios, Zoetrope Studios, and he was there writing music for Coppola's next film, and that's how I met him. I was a reader there. I'm a story analyst.
And did you saw him perform musically several times, presumably?
Never. Had no idea who or what he was.